Okay, good evening, everyone. I will now be calling the meeting to order. Please stand for the singing of O Canada.
What? Are we singing? Will you sing with me? Doug, will you sing with me? You're not just going to sing, are you? Fight you, IRL.
And now, the Western Song.
Samir, go in the middle. Right now.
W's up!
Western U, College Fair and Square. Arts and meds are strong for you tonight if you dare to go now. Red and purple colors are what I all know. Special colors is the best one we'll ever show. 'Cause this U is our U. Foreigners will try to tour us to fight for money in Maine. What's Maine? We will always adore her. Our alma mater, Western School of Fame. Western goes marching down the field. Will never ever yield. The other team has lots of pep, lots of pep. So the other team has no step. When the game goes down in history, history, another Western victory, victory. For Western U, Western U, rah, rah, rah. W-E-S-T-E-R-N, Western, 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 woo!
Please stay standing for the land recognition. Western University is situated on the traditional territories of the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, Lenape, and Attawandaron peoples, who have long-standing relationships to the land and region of the southwestern Ontario and the City of London. The local First Nation communities of this area include Chippewas of the Thames First Nation, Oneida Nation of the Thames, and Munsee Delaware Nation. In the region, there are 11 First Nation communities and a growing Indigenous urban population. Western values the significant historical and contemporary contributions of local and regional First Nations and of all the original peoples of Turtle Island, North America. Please be seated. All right, we will now do roll call. Polls are now open. 3, 2, 1. Polls are closed. Great. Everyone's here. Okay, moving on. So, just an administrative note, there are some placards that are missing. They are just stuck at Creative. Liz apologizes, unfortunately, but they will be here for the next meeting. Also, we have several proxies here this evening. I will be abiding by the 24-hour rule in which your proxy form has to be handed in to Elizabeth 24 hours before the meeting, so by 7 o'clock yesterday. And you can hand in your proxy form to the USC front desk, and you'll be able to put it in Liz's mailbox. You also need to provide your regrets to both me and Elizabeth, and just state that you will have a proxy in your email as well. Thank you. Moving on to the approval of the agenda. Are there any objections or corrections to the current agenda? Okay, seeing none, I will take it as approved. Are there any objections or corrections to the minutes from our last meeting? No? Okay. Seeing none, I will take it as approved. Moving on to our first presentation from the Gazette.
Yeah, we'll try and make that work. Yeah. Hello, everybody. So, for those of you who haven't met me, my name is Amy O'Crook. I'm the editor-in-chief of the Gazette. Just to tell you a little bit about myself, I just graduated from Western. I was in media, information, and technoculture. I started at the Gazette in my first year, so I worked there every year. I was a news editor for 2 years, which means I actually went to a lot of these council meetings and covered them. After that, I was a graphics and features editor, and then I was elected editor-in-chief. So just to give you a brief structure of the presentation that I'll be giving today, first I'm going to give a little bit of a background about the Gazette. Then I'm going to go over how the Gazette fits in with the USC strategic plan. Then I'm going to pass it off to the chair of the Gazette's publications committee, Jay Menard over there. So the goal of this presentation is to show how the Gazette fits into the USC's long-term plan and acts as a USC service. All right, so just really quickly, the Gazette has been ingrained in campus culture since nearly the beginning. We were founded in 1906, and since then we've been in a variety of different forms. Most recently, we are weekly, we are online every day, and we are weekly in print on Tuesdays. We're also the largest student newspaper in the country in terms of editorial board. We also attract a huge amount of contributors and produce a lot of content, usually about 2 to 3 times more than most other student newspapers. So the Gazette serves students in 2 key ways. The first is the obvious documenting of news and culture on campus. So we inform, we entertain, we promote debate among students and the community. We're also the only watchdog of the university administration. We regularly feature students' entrepreneurship, art, music, athletics, and cover stories that the local media wouldn't. The second way we serve students is that obviously we're a training ground for professional journalists. That means that any student can walk into the Gazette's office from any faculty with no experience, and we will publish them the same day. The goal is to work with students so that by the time they leave the Gazette, they can walk into the CBC, Globe and Mail, Toronto Star, whatever media organization they want, and hopefully get a job and make something happen. So, some of you guys might remember this. In 2015, the Gazette underwent a pretty significant digital transformation. So we went from being a really print-focused organization to becoming a full-fledged multimedia organization. We reduced the number of print copies that we produced. We got a new website. We're focusing on social media. We also integrated with Western TV. So that's just a little bit of background about the Gazette. But how do we fit into the USC's strategic plan? So as you'll all know, the USC released a strat plan this year, dear students, and it outlines the USC's mission for the next 5 years in terms of its plans for student supports and services. So I think the Gazette supports the USC's mission in 3 key ways, by being student-run, promoting experiential learning, and promoting student engagement. All right, so just to talk a little bit about, I'm just gonna adjust this a bit. Just to talk a little bit about experiential learning. So first and foremost, the Gazette provides opportunities for students to learn outside of classrooms. This is something that the USC has highlighted as a major focus going forward, and we really increase the number of opportunities that the USC can provide students to get that hands-on learning experience. So I can personally speak to this. Walking into the Gazette, I had no idea that I liked journalism. It taught me writing skills, how to speak clearly, how to work on a team, how to work in a really high-pressure environment. The first year that I was a news editor, I wrote 60 articles. The Gazette is the only place on campus that could provide me with that kind of experience, and it's even unique among student newspapers in that regard. I would also say, too, that the Gazette is the only place where students can get undergraduate journalism training. There is no undergraduate journalism program. So we really do create a hands-on learning environment where students can gain those skills. And I think we have been pretty successful. Thanks. So you might recognize Hala. She was our opinions editor last year. She was awesome because she actually got a job right from the Gazette at CBC London. So I think she's a great example of how the skills that she learned at the Gazette were immediately transferable. In the strategic document, they also identifies the USC's mission as that students have the power to change the world. I think that this is a really powerful message, and I often think of this guy, Stuart Thompson, when I hear that. And Stu's really interesting because he was editor-in-chief of the Gazette 7 years ago, and since then he's worked at the Globe and Mail, Wall Street Journal, New York Times, and now he does a lot of really interesting and important political reporting in the States. So I was kind of the Gazette that led him to that. Stu's not the only one. We have alumni at many major media organizations. We have investigative reporters, foreign correspondents. We have Elliot Friedman, Susan Delacourt. So these are just some of our alumni who work in media organizations. But I think that what we often don't highlight too is that we have a ton of alumni in other industry. We have lots of alumni who are lawyers, media lawyers, who are in business, who are in medicine. So I think these are great examples of how the Gazette's hands-on learning environment has produced real-world success. So just to speak briefly to student engagement. So I think that the Gazette complements the USC's engagement goals. So we've often been identified by USC surveys as one of the most recognizable USC services. And we do a number of things on campus to reach out to students and to increase engagement. Obviously, we do provincial and federal debates. We do USC debates. We give students that on-campus access to the political process. We also try and let students know what the USC is and help explain you to students. So we do that through USC Explainers and our special issues. We do that through highlighting the initiatives that you guys do here. I think that a recent example of that would have been, I don't know if you guys saw it, but we did an article about how last year's charity ball donation actually led a counseling center to eliminate its wait times. So that was a great story that nobody else was covering, and it was a way that the Gazette could share with students what the USC does. The other thing is that I think that it highlights that not only do we deal a lot directly with students and reach a lot of students through our office and who come into the office and write for us, but I think also we reach a ton of students online, and that's why I kind of highlighted this example here. It's one of our more popular stories, to be frank, but I think it's a great example of the Gazette and its journalism. We're providing students with news that they want about their community, about Western. And then lastly, just like it's one thing that's important to you guys is that you're student-driven, the Gazette is also very student-driven. Probably the most obvious way that we are is through our editorial board. So we have 24 student editors who write articles, who produce photos and videos. All of the content that we produce is student made. They're an extremely dedicated group of individuals. They often work 30 plus weeks. And the Gazette can kind of give them that daily experience. The other thing too is that we give them leadership experience. There's mentorship opportunities through the editors interacting with volunteers and interns. There's ways to move up in the organization. You can become a member of front office, so such as myself or my 2 managing editors. So I think that in that way, the Gazette provides a platform to the USC to provide students with these leadership opportunities, whether it's being an editor or one day leading the organization. So in summary, I would say that those 3 major areas are just some ways that the Gazette kind of furthers the USC's core mission, especially as it relates to the strategic plan. All right, and another reason why I wanted to come in front of you guys today is that I'm going to be doing 2 things. So I'm going to be doing community outreach on November 17th. It's a Friday, and that's just an opportunity. It's an invitation to anybody in this room to come to the Gazette's office. Come see where we work. Come meet me. I would love to meet all of you. You can talk to the editors. You can ask me any operational questions. You can come just say hi. So that's going to be happening on November 17th. I'm also going to be doing a budget open house in January. So that's a really good opportunity to kind of talk about the Gazette's financials, the nitty-gritty kind of details, and I'll give you more information on that as it's kind of fleshed out a little bit. In the meantime, you don't have to wait until November 17th. That's my contact information right there. It's also all available online. Reach out to me if you want to give the Gazette feedback, if you like something, you don't like something, you think we should cover something here, you have a story tip. I really am open to whatever you guys have to say, whatever you'd like to kind of flag my attention to. So that's all of my contact information. Call me, come by the office, whatever you would like to do. And I think that on that note, I'll pass it off to the chair of the Publications Committee, Jay Menard. And thank you so much for your time.
Well, hello, and I want to thank you for having me today. I appreciate the time, and I promise I won't take too much of your time tonight. I know you have other business to deal with, but we want to take this opportunity, and we've talked about this over a couple of years at the Gazette Publication Committee about reintroducing ourselves to council and really reaffirming what our role is and who we are. I'll take a cue from Amy and start just by introducing myself. So my name's Jay Menard. My primary role is I'm a content strategist at Digital Echidna, which is a web design digital marketing company based in London, Ontario. I also freelance for a number of publications, and I am currently involved in the accessibility world in a number of ways. I'm on the Premier's Roundtable for Employment and Accessibility. And I'm also on the City of London's Accessibility Advisory Committee. So we have a little bit of a background with both the media and the politics aspects, so it does give us a unique perspective on some of the challenges we face. I started at the Gazette I started at Western, so I follow a very similar path to Amy. Unfortunately, I just did mine like 25 years earlier, so it's a little bit different. I started at Western in 1993. I became a news editor. Or I was a reporter the next year. I became a news editor the year after that, sports editor the year after that, and then editor-in-chief in 1997. It was a wonderful experience, and to what Amy said, a lot of what I have found, a lot of the colleagues that I've maintained since those years, the Gazette really has been integral to our development, both whether it be as a media person or whether it be in any of the other business opportunities we've taken. The ability to learn how to interview, the soft skills that you learn talking and interacting with people, working within a team, managing a team of editors and volunteers. They're skills that stick with you for life, and I would hazard a guess that if you ask 90% of the people that have been through the Gazette and were seriously involved with the Gazette, they would point to the Gazette as one of the key, if not the key, factors to any success they've enjoyed. So you really do have a wonderful resource here. As publishers of the Gazette, you have a wonderful resource that benefits students beyond the names that we often talk about, the Paul Wells and the Elliot Friedmans. Those are the marquee names that we see, but the scope and reach of the Gazette, and by extension the USC, extends well beyond that, and it's something that we think you should be proud of, and we hope that we can continue to have a positive working relationship to allow the Gazette to continue to grow and flourish. Why the Gazette Publishing Committee was started about 4 years ago is in a way to sort of depoliticize the often challenging nature that comes from having the USC, being the publisher, working with the Gazette, who oftentimes can be critical of USC actions or is a watchdog trying to promote the benefits of students. I think we all have the same goals. We want to inform students. We want to provide the best possible experience for students. Sometimes how those goals are implemented may have differences of opinions. And so the Gazette works very hard to promote those ideals, but sometimes that can come in conflict. I had the opportunity last year to be in the budget meeting, and it was interesting because I felt like I was back to when I was editor-in-chief 25 years ago, because many of the issues, many of the concerns, many of the challenges we have repeat every single year. And so we put the Gazette Publications Committee in place as an attempt to try to mitigate those challenges and to be that sober second thought and provide a history. What I like about the Publications Committee, it really is representative of a cross section of the demographic of people interested in the newspaper. We have student representation. We just actually named our latest student representative. We have representation from the USC on the board. We have faculty, we have former Gazetters in the industry and without, and then of course we have some non-voting members who are resource members, like Ian Greaves as a Gazette manager, and even the current front office sits in, but they are not voting members, they're resource members in this. What we really want to be is that point of contact. So if there are challenges, we want to depoliticize, and if we can, de-escalate any challenges before they get to a point where it becomes a much larger issue. We want to be that resource, so if there are questions, if there are issues with either how Gazette coverage is being handled or certain things are being funded, we want to be that primary point of contact. And we've been able to work over the past couple of years to do that effectively in certain cases. Recently, we received a letter from a number of the faculty advisors in regards to coverage of the orientation week that we took into consideration. We met last week finally to discuss it, and we've provided a response back. That's the way the committee should work, that we do want people coming to us if there are challenges. We don't want to escalate this to a point where it becomes more challenging than it needs to be. We want to work in a partnership, and as we are representative of across the board, we feel that we can provide that type of information, we can provide that type of resource.
Thank you. That is the end of your time.
Certainly. Okay, so I will just finish by saying you can get in touch with me at chair@westerngazette.ca. My contact information is also available through Amy. If you need to give me a call, we'd love to hear you at any time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I've been informed that in lieu of the 5-minute Q&A period, the Gazette would prefer to have one-on-one consultations. Are there any objections to this? No? Okay, so then we will skip. Oh, sorry, yes, Councillor Pratt.
Mr. Pratt, Social Science President. I think just while it's fresh in our mind, if we could exhaust the 5-minute period while we have the editor and the publications manager out here, it would be kind of pertinent just to ask a few preliminary questions that we could maybe take into individual consultations as well. So actually use the 5-minute question and answer period that has been designated in the agenda.
Okay. We will vote on this. Can I get, so I'm assuming you're moving to keep it. A seconder to Councillor Kimji, all in favor? What?
There is no Q&A period. I informed the counselor services that that was not a thing. It was a mistake in the agenda.
Okay, sorry, it was a mistake in the agenda, so we will forgo it. I'm sorry, can one person speak at one time? Thank you. Councillor Pratt.
Mr. Pratt, Social Science President. Madam Speaker, I'm pretty sure if it's stipulated in the agenda issued to council, we do have to pursue it if that's a point of parliamentary procedure for it, even if it was incorrect, but it was issued to all standing members of council, so I do believe we do have to pursue the 5-minute question and answer period. If not, I would be happy to motion for a 5-minute question and answer period, because think we're just extending this debate right now.
Would someone like to motion to amend the agenda to remove the 5-minute question period? No? Okay. Seeing as it is an official item on the agenda, we will carry on with the 5-minute Q&A period. If you wouldn't mind coming back to the podium. Thank you. Okay. Are there any questions for the Gazette? Councillor Pratt?
First and foremost, thanks for coming out, guys. We appreciate the presentation. I think you did touch on it in the end of your presentation a bit about concerns of orientation staff, and I have had a lot of orientation staff approach me, and I would like to hear some more rationale for articles such as the residence bingo article, which I think was a very controversial article issued from your page. And I just wanted to hear some rationale from you guys directly on council floor tonight about the issuement of that article.
Sure. Yes, and I'm happy to respond to that. So obviously this year the frosh/drinking game was a very controversial piece in the Gazette's orientation issue. We saw a lot of reaction on Facebook to it. And just to respond to the question here, I did have a number of reasons for publishing it. And first and foremost, I believe that it fit into our mandate for a few reasons. So the first reason is that the Gazette's responsibility first and foremost is to reflect the undergraduate experience. We know during orientation week that many students do choose to drink, regardless of being underage, regardless of there being a ban. So I do think that in some capacity, the Gazette did have to reflect that in our orientation issue. And I also think that in light of the other content in the issue, the Gazette was very balanced when it came to drinking during O Week. There was 3 pieces of content that mentioned drinking. So there was one graphic and there was 2 articles. Both of the articles were preventative, included safety, what to do, what not to do. The other one was all about the history of Dry O Week, and it pointed out its merits, that you don't need to drink to have fun, that this has done a lot to promote student safety. So I think the other thing is that it's also the Gazette's mandate to entertain. So we really want to, not everything in an orientation issue, especially in the frosh issue, is meant to be a hard news story. There is room in there to poke fun, and especially any total ban is going to be parodied, especially I think a ban that is often, or especially with Dry O Week, I know many students do not follow it. So we did have to comment on it in some capacity, and it really wasn't, I don't think, advocating or endorsing binge drinking. It really was kind of challenging and making light of the fact that many students during O Week don't necessarily follow the dry programming.
And I'll just follow up, Mr. Pratt. I did respond to Mr. Tang's letter. Were you able to forward that to other? Yes, I was. Okay, so my response would be along that line. I'm happy if you don't have that letter, I would be happy to provide it to you. Okay, so I mean, very much what Amy was saying. We did discuss this. We do believe that there was fair and balanced thought put into this, that we do believe that publication does not necessarily mean advocacy, especially in a non-editorial context. So this is reflecting a student reality, just as if, and we feel that very much ignoring the existence of drinking on O Week would be akin to ignoring the existence of FOCO, even though the administration would obviously prefer that the Gazette only focuses on promoting their agenda. That's not what the Gazette is intended to be.
Councillor Yee?
Hi, proxy for Frank Yee. Hi, I'm Jacqueline. Nice to meet you. So just to respond to that, I understand where you're coming from. I totally understand that the Gazette needs to reflect all student experience. However, in my experience, having been a SOF this year and having received SOF training, and obviously we tried our best to enforce the Dry O Week. However, we were explicitly told during training that not everyone's going to abide to the Dry O Week, and it's important to not necessarily scare frosh, but at the same time not encourage it. And I feel as if the frosh slosh and the Western TV piece strayed further from necessarily acknowledging it and meant more towards encouraging it, because there was like a lot more promotion in binge drinking versus saying that students will drink, do it safely. So that's my perspective and where I had an issue with the publication, because I think there's a very distinct line between, saying, okay, you're gonna drink, that's fine, here's how to be safe, here's who to contact, make sure you're okay, versus like frosh slosh, literally. So that was just my perspective.
Thank you. We have 15 seconds left of time, so unfortunately that won't be enough for another question. Thank you very much for coming and answering questions.
And again, for the people who do have questions, you are more than welcome to get in touch with Amy or I. Our doors are always open. So. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, moving on to our for action section of the agenda. So our first motion is the standing resolutions of council executive appointments amendments. Be it resolved that council approve the amendments to the standing resolutions of council pertaining to executive appointments. And I will be looking for a mover and a seconder. Councillor Uhas moves and a seconder for this motion. Councillor Foreman. Great. Okay. Councillor Uhas, would you like to speak to the motion? No? Councillor Foreman? No. Okay. We will now enter into a question period if there are any questions regarding the motion itself. Yes, Councillor Olson.
It's not technically a question, but I'd like to give this some context because it came through my committee.
Okay, sure.
Sweet. Okay. So this motion was brought to the Governance and Finance Standing Committee, and it passed through it. And just so we don't repeat some of the debate there, we've already hashed out some points. During the passing of this motion, we decided to split the question into two parts. So one discussing whether or not the position should be elected or appointed in the first place, and also whether or not USC councillors should be banned from running for the position. So first of all, we decided that they should be appointed because, as Toby said, the elections were not successful. And also, it's for such a big position like this, it's important that the person who does the job is elected based on merit. And as far as whether having a USC councillor ban for this position is worthwhile, we decided as a committee that it would be a waste of expertise to ban councillors from running for the position. There was some debate surrounding whether or not a councillor would have an easier time being elected because the position would come through council. But in the end, the lack of interest in the position from trying to get it elected in the beginning of this year, it sort of shows just how little people are knowledgeable about it and how councillors are probably the best option for it, or at least we don't want to lock them out.
Thank you. Are there any other questions regarding this motion? Okay, we will then enter into the period of debate. Please state if you are for or against this motion before you speak. Yes, President Chalabot.
Just speaking for this motion and kind of speaking to some of the reasons why I brought this motion forward to the Governance Standing Committee. At the moment, the Student Services Committee is made up of 4 USC representatives, Landon and myself, as well as 2 other representatives. And at the moment, we don't have a 4th representative because we needed to host a by-election in order to do this, but it really just doesn't have the interest nor the resources in order to do so. So by passing this motion, it just makes it a little easier, not only on ourselves, but for executives of the future to be able to put someone on this committee right at the beginning of our terms, maybe even in March when we're hiring everyone else, and have this be an active committee through the summer and through the school year.
Thank you. Is there any other debate? Councillor Pratt?
I'd like to call the question on the motion.
All those in favor of calling the question? Oh, sorry, first, can I have a seconder for calling the question? Councillor Smart. Okay. And all those in favor of calling the question? Okay, we will call the question. Polls are now open. Sorry, technical difficulties, hang on. Okay, they're open now. Okay, 3, 2, 1. Oh. We might be missing one. Oh, there we go. Okay. Yeah. Oh, go back. Okay. Well, the motion passed. Okay, we'll move on to our second motion. The ratification of the 2017-2018 USC policy paper proposals. Whereas the University Students' Council exists as an organization that serves as the representative body for Western's undergraduate students, it is incumbent upon the USC to convey principles, concerns, and recommendations to the university's administration, staff, and faculty. Whereas every year the USC writes 3 advocacy policy papers, the Purple Papers. After consultation of the USC and the Advocacy Standing Committee, the topics of interest to our students are the following: affordability, student employment, and equity and diversity. Whereas the Advocacy Standing Committee has amended, made necessary recommendations, and approved the written submissions of the advocacy policy paper proposals for this year, be it resolved that the 2017-18 USC approve these written proposals submissions so the writing process may continue. This motion has been moved by Councillor Zonta and seconded by Vice President Tulk. Are there... Oh, okay. Councillor Zonta, would you like to speak to this motion?
So hopefully everyone got a chance to briefly read over or skim over the paper proposals. So I'll just talk a little bit about the process that we went through for this year. It was more of a collaborative approach with counselors on the Advocacy Standing Committee as well as the associates who are the authors of the papers. So in the preliminary stages, students were consulted who are on our committee, and they brought forward some ideas. The associates took that into consideration, wrote the papers, or the paper proposals, I should say. I should make that distinction. So then we all came together as a group and kind of hashed out all ideas. If the things needed to be added, amended, taken out, were relevant, irrelevant to the paper. So I just want to kind of drive home that by no means are these proposals the be-all and end-all of the policy papers. Things can always be added and removed as the writing process continues. This process or passing of the proposals that we're doing now is just to get the ball rolling, and so we can get more feedback from all of you as well. We really hope that you guys come with feedback so we can see if anything else fits in with the scope of the papers.
Thank you. Vice President Tulk, would you like to speak to the motion?
Sure, yeah, just to, sorry guys, touch on some of those points again. I think we've sort of improved our policy paper process this year. So as the chair had mentioned there, that these proposals are coming forward looking for support from our council to essentially commission and continue the writing of the full papers, which will be, it could be a 2-month to 3-month process for us. And we provided the USA research team. I utilized them to actually provide our advocacy standing committee with some academic and policy writing training a few weeks ago, so that this year, rather than the vice president and their associate team writing the policy papers, we can still sort of work on the same framework. However, counselors who are interested on the Advocacy Standing Committee will be working with one of my 3 associates on one of these papers. Many counselors on the committee have indicated which papers they're currently looking to be a part of, and they will be engaged in that process throughout the entirety, just so that there is some elected representation throughout the entirety of this process, and counselors are sort of bringing forward concerns throughout the paper, so that when they hit the council floor in a couple months from now, there's sort of a lot more dialogue and conversation that has gone into the paper process. So 3 papers in particular that we've identified and would like to write this year include one on affordability, one on student employment, and one on equity and diversity. And so in these proposals, you'll sort of see a brief description of the topic and high-level principles of what the paper is looking to outline. So just for example, in the affordability paper, we're going to be looking at things like scholarships, like merit-based scholarships here at the university, non-tuition related expenses, student fees, equitable jobs on campus, and tuition and financial aid. And these papers are specifically looking at our campus in particular and addressing those issues. So we've sort of outlined some direction for the paper and where we'd like to take it to go, and then in the next couple months we sort of come out with some concrete recommendations pertaining to each of those specific topics. And as a counselor or president, if you feel like something isn't included in this paper, we're still looking for some support to pass these initial paper topics so that we can continue to engage everyone in the process and include more thoughts and dialogue in the actual papers until we hit sort of the consultation stage with the student body, and then ultimately passing the paper, ideally in the beginning of 2nd semester, so there's still a little bit of time in my term to actually go out and advocate to the administration on some pieces that come out in these papers. So if counselors have any specific thoughts or comments on each of the papers, we'd be happy to sort of entertain them, but the timeline today would essentially be a vote of support to commission the actual papers, and then we'll begin writing the papers to present again to council to actually pass for approval in the 2nd semester.
Great, thank you. All right, we'll move into the question period. Are there any questions regarding this motion? Okay, seeing none, we will move into debate. Would anyone like to speak to this motion? Okay, seeing none, I will, oh, yes, Councillor Pratt.
I'd like to call the question.
All right, can I get a seconder? Councillor Griffith. All in favor of calling the question? All right, we will call the question. Polls are now open. Okay, 3, 2, 1. Polls are closed. And the motion passes unanimously. Okay, moving on to our 3rd motion. The motion to create the ad hoc bus pass review subcommittee of the Student Experience Standing Committee. Whereas Bylaw 1 states that council holds jurisdiction over policies and positions related to the student interest. Whereas council has the means and democratic legitimacy to both properly review and emphatically recommend the adoption of a position on this matter that best reflects the student interest. Whereas the USC bus levy is standing at $227.88 and cannot be opted out of by any student regardless of use. Whereas the utility of the USC bus pass has gone unreviewed for many years. Be it resolved that council pass the ad hoc bus pass review subcommittee of the Student Experience Standing Committee terms of reference, sending the terms of reference to the Student Experience Standing Committee to be struck at their next meeting. Be it further resolved that council recognizes it cannot change the levying of the bus pass on its own, but it does call on the Board of Directors and Executive to assist with moving forward any changes passed by resolution through council concerning this matter, recognizing that council represents the will of the students. So this motion has been moved by Councillor Olson. I will be looking for a seconder. Councillor Griffith. Councillor Olson, would you like to speak to this motion?
Social Science, Councillor Keaton Olson. So I'll just read the introductory thing I wrote here, which is the cost of the USC bus pass fee levied to each student is up to $227.88 yearly. With that much money on hand, a student could buy 119 trips on a London City bus directly from the LTC itself. 119 trips are enough to get to and from campus 5 times a week for 3 months straight without taking into account bus transfers. $230 is no small amount of money. Currently, over the course of a typical 4-year undergrad, every student can be expected to spend almost $1,000 on the bus pass, whether they use it or not. It doesn't matter if someone walks, bikes, carpools, or drives every day. In its current state, students cannot opt out of paying it, and that is potentially unacceptable when demanding a fee this financially significant. Although as a council we cannot sit down and discuss terms with the LTC to renegotiate the USC's bus pass, as the guiding body of the USC and the link that connects students to this organization, it is well within council's jurisdiction to review and recommend changes to the USC bus pass in order to outline the changes this organization needs to strive for in regards to the current deal reached with the LTC. So basically, what this motion will do is create, it won't technically create, but it'll send it to the Student Experience Standing Committee, who will then review what's already been completed. They can make amendments to the composition, the mandate, the objective. But they'll be able to fine-tune it to their needs based on how they think they'll be able to complete it, what sort of work they need to do. And then they would be able to strike it. And as it stands now, this would sort of commission a report on the student usage of the bus pass, which I think is really important considering it's un-opt-outable. It's our largest transfer out. It costs the USC, or sorry, it costs students $7 million each year, almost. So I think that demanding people pay for this service without doing our due diligence and ensuring 100% that it is worthwhile for students to be paying for it is absolutely necessary.
Thank you. Councillor Griffith, you seconded, right? Yeah. Would you like to speak to the motion? Okay, great. Are there any questions regarding this motion? Okay. Councillor Uhas, you can begin.
Erica Uhas, nursing counselor. So my question kind of more involves how Western has the structure set up with the LTC to ensure we do get the deals that we do, because I'm well aware that if you did pay for like a normal pass, the price per year would definitely be well over the $200 that we pay. So to get those deals, don't we have to meet a certain quota of students purchasing the passes? So kind of like the motivation behind that is, if we were to do opt-outs, how would we ensure that we would still meet a quota to be able to get that deal with the LTC?
Councillor Olson, would you like to speak to that?
This report would just simply make recommendations on what students want. It wouldn't necessarily immediately call on the executive or the board of directors to try and negotiate an opt-out change, nor could it. Technically, the only thing council can do about the bus pass is remove it through referendum. But I feel like it'd be great to have a better understanding of our largest fee, just for perpetuity.
Councillor Tang?
Kyle Tang, Music President. I was just wondering if anyone here knew when the bus rapid transit plans are going to come forward as passed by City Council, and whether or not that would potentially affect the deal that we have standing or any new deals moving forwards.
Does anyone on council know this information?
Yeah, I can sort of speak to that. So there's not really a definitive answer on that, but it's not in the near future. Like the construction plans for the BRT are, I'd say optimistically, maybe 4 years. At worst, like probably 8 or 9. So it's sort of long term. You want to say something?
But if it does change, would that affect the deal? Would we have to renegotiate when it does come in?
So I can speak to that part. Over the course of this summer, I sat at the negotiating table with LTC, as well as with Fanshawe and the Society of Graduate Students. And it's a very real concern that once BRT comes, it's just going to increase the operating costs of the LTC, which they'll naturally put back onto their main users, which will be students as well as the London community. So looking down the road, at one point, yes, there will probably be a time where the bus price will jump from one to another. Being sensitive of that is the reason why we kind of try and negotiate it every year to make sure that there's as much flexibility as possible. But no one really knows what exactly that price point will be, because it's really hard to project exactly what those operating costs will be.
Thank you. Councillor Foreman?
Jared Foreman, Social Science Counselor. Just a question to either Councillor Olson or the executive. Do either of you have data on sort of how many students use the bus pass or use buses regularly? Just because, of course, as what Councillor Yuha says, there's concerns about meeting the quota in order to maintain this sort of deal.
Okay, you go first, and then I'll add to it.
Every full-time and part-time student, I believe part-time actually, has to purchase a bus pass. So at least every Brescia, Kings, Huron, Western student holds a bus pass. Toby would have to speak more to the usage.
So, as many of you may know, we're currently rolling out smart card bus passes. So, as opposed to those paper and student cards ones that we had to use, now you can just kind of tap your bus pass as you walk on. So, what we're hoping is that once we get the entire student body on those bus passes, they will now have the ability to track that as a specific metric. Because in the past, it's been really hard to actually quantify how many students ride the bus and how much of London's total ridership is made up by just Western University, Fanshawe University, and SOGS. And so once we do that, then we can really start to look at, okay, there's this many students riding it, how much do they each have to pay? But regarding the price, the fact that opt-outs aren't part of the deal is a reason why the price is so low. Giving students the ability to opt out will increase the price for the amount of students that do want to use the bus pass. And so that's why opt-outs really haven't been an option in order to keep it affordable. Speaking, whichever choice you choose to make, whether you want it or not, that's just kind of how it's been done in the past.
Councillor Kimchi?
Test. Adam Kimji, social science counselor. So whoever wants to answer this, when was this deal reached? Like, when did we start providing the bus pass with the Western experience? And then a second part to that was, when was the last time this was actually reviewed?
So, follow-up question. When you say reviewed, do you mean just like usage numbers and what students wanted, or do you mean service-wise?
Service-wise, like, do we sit down and like say, do students actually need this, or do we like that kind of?
So quarterly, all of the student groups meet with LTC to discuss service levels in general. So is the LTC doing a good enough job of serving students? And that's from the conversations like that, that's where we went from just the 2 and the 6 to the 106 and the 102, because they realized they needed more buses on campus. So through those service conversations, we've been able to add a lot of those pieces in. But when we talk about reviewing specifically whether students want it or not, I personally wouldn't be able to speak to the last time that happened. And then regarding when that is so distracting. Regarding when the bus pass was first put in for a referendum, Erin's currently searching through the USC database, and we'll see if we can find it. But if not, I can follow up with you and let you know.
Councillor Zonta? Okay. Councillor Yee?
This is just a point of information. Part-time students actually don't get bus passes. So yeah, statistics.
Councillor Syed. Si-
Proxy for Councillor Sayed. Speaking for the motion, I truly don't see anything wrong with this motion. It's just to put something up for review. So unless it's a big concern that this would take a lot of time out of the student experience
this is just
committee.
the question period.
Oh,
We're
I
not speaking
apologize.
to the motion yet. That's okay.
I apologize. Well, actually, could I direct a question to the chair of the Student Experience Committee? Do you feel that this would be a very huge investment of the committee's time and then take away from other goals for the year?
Hello. Hello. Grace, Science Counselor, also Student Experience Committee Chair. So I guess what I want to do is kind of show you guys the math. We have 13 members, and 3 of them are already on the transgender subcommittee, and possibly 5 if the motion in new business goes through. And we also want to implement another one for possibly a Purple Bikes review. And if we include this, that kind of maxes out on all the people that we have. And in my opinion, I don't think that our resources should be spent on this. Instead, we should focus on more pertinent issues. Also, in addition to this, we're also mandated to, by our terms of reference, to review 3 to 5 services each year on top of all of this. So our resources are pretty maxed out, guys. Thanks.
Councillor Griffith.
So, well, before that happened, I was going to say, it seems like people seem to have a lot of questions about the whole London transit system, and there doesn't seem to be a lot of definitive answers. So it might seem like a good move to maybe have a committee research it and come back to us with those answers, which, big surprise, is actually what this motion is doing. So it sort of works out that people are a little unclear on what's going on. In terms of a response to what was just said, Keaton did detail it is $7 million in total expenditure for students every year. We don't know whether we could get that down, whether it could be renegotiated, or whether we could opt out. But $7 million is a lot of money, and I think substantially more than any of the other things that the committee is investigating at this point. So I believe it would be worthwhile. And with that, I would like to motion to move the question.
Want to move to call the question before debate?
To start debate, then.
Oh, to start debate. Okay. Can I get a seconder? Councillor Pratt. All those in favor of moving to the debate period? Okay. We will now enter the debate period. Would anyone like to speak to this motion? Okay. Councillor Olson, you can start us off.
So when we ask money from students, we're like their union. They need to pay us or else they can't graduate school. So when we mandate that they have to pay specifically for a bus pass that they might use, we need to be 100% sure that the money we're taking from students isn't being wasted and that what they get back with this deal is not something that they could just get themselves, or even worse, that they're just wasting money on. And also, I would like to clarify that just because some people have been asking, they seem to be concerned with what would happen to the actual bus pass once this report comes back, but I would just like to clarify that it is just a report. So the terms of reference don't call for anything. It's just strictly an information gathering procedure.
Sorry, I'm just assuming you were speaking for the motion. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Councillor Pratt?
Mr. Pratt, Social Science President. Speaking in favor of the motion as it currently stands, I do feel that if you do some quick maths as well with all 23,000 or so full-time main campus students plus affiliates, you get roughly around $7 million towards LTC every year from student fees. And this is a very significant sum. If you look at this is one of our largest ancillary fee prices. I don't think it ever hurts to revisit ancillary fees and kind of revisit the negotiations surrounding them, because ancillary fees are on the rise constantly. I think this is a constant issue that we face within our tuitions as well. And I think whatever strides we can make towards reducing these to make tuition more affordable for students is definitely pertinent on council floor. My question towards Councillor Olson, which I didn't quite get to ask, is do you think that the Student Experience Committee is the most apt committee for this motion, or would it be more apt for a maybe perhaps governance and finance or advocacy committee as well, because this is kind of a wide encompassing thing dealing with ancillary fees?
I decided to send it to the Student Experience Standing Committee because it's mandated in their terms of reference to review 5 services each year, 3 to 5. And I feel like this is pretty much our most important service, or at least most financially important. Yeah. Okay. The terms of reference for the Student Experience Committee were written when the executive was the board who also managed the operation side. Would you agree with that? All right, maybe not. Yeah, I feel like it's within Student Experience's mandate to, if not review this service in particular, it is to reach out to students and find out what they're thinking about where their money's going.
Councillor Foreman.
Jared Foreman, Social Science Counselor. I just want to speak against this motion. I just sort of want to first reiterate what Councillor Grace Zeus said earlier. As Vice Chair of the Student Experience Committee, I think, again, I just want to reiterate this point, we do have finite resources. Again, as Grace said, we only have 13 members. We already have chosen the services that we are looking to review this year, and we are looking to add on an additional, we are looking to review Purple Bikes as well, along with the Transgender Subcommittee, which is also taking up the resources. I think it would have been preferable to see this motion earlier in the year before we chose the services that we're looking to review. It's sort of difficult at this point. We've already sort of delved out how we're going to complete our committee business for the year. So again, we have a finite amount of resources, and this is putting a great strain on our committee. Beyond that, so far, I have, like I said, just going on to the question asked earlier, there doesn't seem to be any evidence currently that shows that this is a pertinent issue that students do want to be explored. I understand, yes, it is a lot of money, but the student bus pass is also a very popular policy. A lot of people use it, and there's a lot involved in this. The executive just completed a negotiation for the next couple years for this bus pass, and putting it through our committee when we have finite resources, well, I don't think it will render a result that will be sort of flushed out and covering all the issues that the bus pass includes.
Councillor Zonta.
Alessia Zonta, King's Councillor. I'll speak in favor of the spirit of the motion, but ultimately against the motion. Going off what the executive was saying in terms of when people opt out of the bus pass, it'll only make the bus pass more expensive for those who are using it. I think as a student, $227 for a fee for public transportation is something reasonable considering the prices that already exist. This is a very, very discounted rate. At the beginning of this year, I struggled with not having a bus pass. They thought I was a part-time student, which part-time students do not get a bus pass, and they do not have the option to obtain a bus pass. And I think that is kind of the more pertinent issue. These students are not getting the service that they need. I think that's something like we probably could be looking at first, rather than people who don't want it. These people want it and they're not getting it, so I think that's kind of like a top priority. And I was taking the bus 4 times a day without the transfer, and it cost about $11 a day times 5 times a week, $55 a week. So that 1 week when I didn't have a bus pass, it was kind of tough. So I'm really appreciative of that price. And I don't know if making a subcommittee would be doing the work to ultimately get to a conclusion that is the same that we already have now.
Councillor Grenier.
Councillor Grenier, Social Science. I want to speak in favor of the motion. As it stands, the motion purely creates like an information stance. We know very little about the bus pass right now, and all this committee will do is let us know a lot more. The final outcome of it is recommendations. Absolutely nothing has to be done, but it's what way could we go from there? And also, as a student who has yet to use the bus a single time this year, 200 and what was it, 27? I'm not really a big fan. I doubt I live close enough that I doubt I will ever use it, and I know that there are hundreds and hundreds of students just like me that are going the same way.
Councillor Zhu? Withdrawn. Okay, Councillor Yee?
Proxy for Frankie. Speaking against this motion, and I'd like to also make a recommendation to council or suggest an idea, in that I hear Councillor Zhu and also what Councillor Olsen is saying about which committee it should go to, but I highly recommend that this, while important, because a lot of the subcommittees have already, working groups, whatever, have already decided on what their initiatives are going to be, we should task them to do this in 2018, 2019, so next year's council. But I think we should make a decision now about which committee it should go to, and then further amend this motion to read for that committee in that year.
So are you moving to amend the motion?
I would, if we could decide on which. Governance? Okay, I'd like to make an amendment then. So, where it reads, be it resolved that council pass the ad hoc bus pass review committee. Basically, wherever it says student experience standing committee, to say governance and finance committee for the 2018-2019 school year.
Can I get a seconder for the motion? Councillor Foreman? All right, are there any questions regarding the proposed amendment? Councillor Pratt?
Mr. Pratt, Social Science President, I'd like to pose an amendment to the amendment.
Okay. What is your amendment to
So
the
this will be
amendment?
potentially unfriendly, but I do think that it is October 24th. This is our 3rd meeting of council, and I think that we should be aiming to add more initiatives onto subcommittees. I don't think it's pertinent to push things to next year. I think while we are addressing this issue currently, I think that if you push this to a subcommittee, they can address it before the end of the year. And this motion is really based around gathering literature around the issue. It's not really actionable. So I do think that this is appropriate as long as governance and finance handles it. And I do think that this should be focused on the 2017-2018 council year. So that is my amendment. Instead of 2018-2019, it would be 2017-2018. It's 2017.
Okay,
yes.
just to clarify, Councillor Yee, you didn't propose the amendment for the year?
I did.
You did, okay. Yeah. I don't know who you are, but President Shalabo.
President Shalabo, just so everyone is fully aware, at the end of the summer, we signed a 3-year agreement.
Sorry, can you clarify?
So we already have a bus pass for this year that was negotiated last year. So in August, we agreed to a 3-year agreement that starts next year. So that would be, it starts in 2018, 2019, and goes until 2021.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so Councillor Pratt, you've moved an amendment to the amendment. Can I get a seconder for the second amendment? Councillor Olson, are there any questions regarding the second amendment that pertains to the year? Okay, seeing none, we'll move into debate regarding this. Yes, Councillor Yee.
Speaking against the amendment to the amendment, I understand your perspective. Having sat on the Student Experience Committee last year and having ambitious goals to look at more things and not getting to them, not saying that this committee would run into the same issues, but just knowing that we tried to do 5 and ultimately did not get through 5. And I don't know how much you guys have, but it sounds like you also have like the LGBTQ one to look at, so that's already potentially 6, adding a 7th, right? And it will be going to the Governance and Finance Committee. I'm aware of that, but I just feel as if, as much as we can be very optimistic, I just want to make sure that this is addressed and properly addressed as it should be. So I think it's a stronger idea to wait until next year, even though I know we just discussed how it was passed. But if this is to go forward, I don't think it should be this year. I think it should really get the time it deserves.
Okay.
And therefore be the first thing that's settled on for next year.
1 second. Councillor Yee, yeah. It was unfriendly. No, you have to pass the amendment to the amendment before you can pass the amendment.
But we didn't actually decide to talk about the amendment.
It was seconded. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Who is next? Councillor Pratt.
Mitchell Pratt, Social Science President. I do think that Governance and Finance is currently tasked with a moderate amount of initiatives, considering the chair of the committee is my roommate, so I do hear a fair amount about it. But regardless of that, I think that I'm always hesitant to push things off by a year in student politics because then I'm worried it doesn't get done. So I would like to see this go forward in terms of actually gathering this information. So maybe successive councils can look into it and like look into the utility of these bus passes, regardless of the 3-year deal. If there is literature on it, then future councils can draw on it. Thank you.
Councillor Middle.
I'd like to speak against this amendment.
This is just the question period with regards to the amendment. To the
Okay.
amendment.
My bad.
No worries. Councillor Olson. Yes. Okay. Motion to move into debate. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Middle. All those in favor of moving to debate with regards to the amendment to the amendment? Yeah. Sorry, can you keep your placards up, please? Okay, we will now move into the debate period with regards to the amendment with regards to the year. All right. We will now debate the amendment to the amendment. Councillor Olson.
I'd like to speak in favor of this amendment to the amendment. Governance and Finance currently only has 1 subcommittee, and also all my committee members are smart. They're my dream team. They're my special guys. I know that they could, like, this is going to be not too difficult. We can do it this year. Also, I would like to also point out that it's a good idea to sort of build a database, even if the deal was just re-signed. In 4 years, when they go back to it, it would be a great resource to look at a report from 4 years ago and be like, oh, so it's been bad for this long, or oh, it's been good for this long. So, thank you.
Councillor Middle.
I'm back. I'm gonna speak against this motion, or the amendment. To the amendment. In light of the new information about the 3-year agreement ending in 2021, and the amount of changes that could happen during that period, it doesn't make sense to be arguing about any of this. So I'm going to call the question as well.
Can I have a seconder? Councillor Said. All those in favor of calling to question? The amendment to the amendment, just so you know. Yes. Yes. So the amendment to the amendment is that, so the original amendment was that it would move to the governance committee in the years, for the years 2018 to 2019. The amendment to the amendment is now that the years will be changed from 2018-19 to 2017-2018. Okay? All right, we will now call to question the amendment to the amendment. So all those in favor of the amendment to the amendment? Okay, that carries. We will now discuss the amendment as amended, which pertains to the Governance Standing Committee for the year 2017-2018. Are there any questions regarding that amendment as amended? Huh? Oh, can you just change it? Yeah. Are there any questions? Oh, yes, President Shellivo.
Test. Because governance and finance has the manpower to do it, and we also the willpower. And we also have it's could be taken as within our jurisdiction to review student money. If not the student experience, we could look at it from a more financial standpoint.
Okay. Any other questions regarding the amendment as amended? No? Okay. We will then move into debate. Oh, yes, sorry.
A point of clarification as to the intent behind this committee. Is it to review whether the bus pass contributes to the student experience, or to
Sorry, is this a question with regards to the amendment?
Yes, because it's asking as to whether it falls within the purview of the governance and finance, if it is a committee brought forward to explore something that contributes to the student experience, or whether you're looking purely from a financial standpoint, if this is a burden that we should be placing on students, looking at it monetarily or student experience value.
Point of order. Didn't the call to question pass?
I've raised my hand.
Did the call to question pass on the amendment to the amendment?
On the amendment to the amendment, yes.
So shouldn't we just vote on that, or did we already?
We voted on the amendment to the amendment, yes.
And that passed?
Yes. Okay. Now we're voting on the amendment as amended. Okay, sorry, Councillor Olson, please continue.
I think at this point it would just be semantics. You can either look at it from a student experience standpoint or from a monetary standpoint. In the end, it would technically reach the same goal, but governance and finance would look at it like we'd look at other schools' bus pass deals and stuff like that, as well as, yeah.
Okay, any further questions? Okay. We will then move into debate, starting with the law counselor. I'm sorry.
Joshua Hollenberg, law counselor. I'd like to speak in favor of the motion. I'd like to reiterate the points that Governance Committee has the manpower and clearly the interest to pursue this. I think that if you look at it from a point of view of whether the value for money contributes to the student experience in a positive way versus a negative way, it can fall within the purview of the council. Also, just to build on a point that the president made earlier, we have just started collecting a lot of data or potentially have the ability to collect a lot of data about bus usage. And I think now is the time to start looking at that data, start collecting it, to start analyzing it. That's something we can put into motion now. So when the issue does come up in 3 years from now, whether we want to continue on, we'll have a wealth of data that we'll be able to look back over a number of years and say, this is a positive thing, this is a negative thing. If we wait until a few years from now, it'll be an overload, it'll be confusing, there'll be a lot of stuff that'll be introduced at the same time. It will be overwhelming. But by doing it this way, we're able to set a base so that future councils will be able to take this information as reviewed, as analyzed year over year, and make a more informed decision.
President Shellabo.
President Shellabo. So I'm going to speak against this amendment, and that's just purely looking at the scope of the Governance and Finance Committee and looking at the work that we're already doing internally. In order to negotiate responsibly, we've already started collecting data on what other schools are paying and that sort of thing. So that's information that we're already looking at internally, so in order not to duplicate that work, as well as the information collected on smart cards currently sits with the LTC. So we won't be able to grab that information this year for sure, because they're waiting until all students are on the bus pass before they will share that information with us as well. And I think it just makes more sense to look at this from a student experience lens. Do students want the bus pass? What do they like about it? What don't they like about it? And then that's able to inform us at a negotiating table. And at the end of the day, if the only reason we're pushing this to a different committee is because one is overloaded, it may make more sense to just push it to another year because we have time to do so. I know that already failed, but it just doesn't make sense to look at this in a governance and finance lens.
Councillor Uhas?
Erica, you as nursing counselor, would I be able to motion for a 5-minute recess just so we can kind of just like get a handle on what's going on? Because there's a lot of amendments and everything flying around. I think we'd be benefiting from 5 minutes just to take a moment and read and see how it all ties in, because I'm seeing like a lot of like crosstalk going on here.
Do we just want some clarification on what we are currently discussing? Yes, I see some nods. So the current amendment that we are discussing is whether or not the motion should, the ad hoc bus pass review subcommittee terms of reference should be referred to the Student Experience Standing Committee or to the Governance and Finance Standing Committee. So that is the amendment we are currently discussing. Does that clarify it? Do you still want a motion for recess? Sure. Okay. Can I get a seconder for how long of a recess would you like? 5 minutes? I'll look for a seconder for a 5-minute recess. Seeing no seconder, your motion fails. So we will continue with debate regarding the amendment as amended. Councillor Cook.
Test. Yeah, Jake Sawyer, engineering counselor. So whether or not I agree with passing the motion in general, I think it makes sense to send this to the Governance and Finance Committee. A lot of the stuff we've talked about tonight is related to the cost of it and the $7 million. And since we have the bandwidth on that committee to do this, I think it just makes sense that we would send it there instead of a committee that can't take any more on. So I guess I'd like to call the question on this.
On the amendment?
On the amendment, yeah.
Sure. Can I get a seconder? Councillor Abnett. Okay. All those in favor of calling to question the amendment? Okay, we will call to question the amendment. All those in favor of the amendment regarding the Governance Standing Committee? Okay, the amendment passes. We will now return to debating the motion as twice amended. Councillor Caracalo? Oh, Caracciolo? Caracciolo? Yes? Caracciolo.
Hello.
Cello.
So, sorry, just to clarify, we're in discussion period for the original motion, correct? Right. Yeah. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so I guess given that most of the debate earlier about the motion was whether or not the Student Experience Committee had the resource to handle it, and there seemed to be a lot of interest given the last amendment that passed about the value in the research, I would like to call the motion amended motion to question.
Okay. Can I get a seconder? Councillor Zaman? All those in favor of calling the motion as twice amended to question? Okay, we will call to question the motion as amended. Polls are now open. Okay, 3, 2, 1, polls are now closed. The motion passes. Not unanimously, don't. Okay. Now we have our four action item, the election of council members to the Ad Hoc Council Development Committee. So at this point in time, candidates may appoint themselves on the council floor. Yes.
Jared Foreman, Social Science Counselor. Can we get a bit of clarification on this committee, please?
All right, one of the few times I speak to you in a council meeting. So much fun. Okay, so last year I had created a committee to discuss council training because we had changed when the Speaker of Council provided training to council, where the Speaker of Council will be providing training to the incoming group rather than at the end of their term, rather than the incoming group at the beginning of their term. So what I've done is just to get some feedback from council members, preferably council members who were not returning to council, people who are either graduating or leaving or taking other roles, who had no real vested interest in other than seeing council training improved. Because we had been doing council training for a number of years the same way, and we weren't really sure whether anybody actually benefited from it or liked it, and overwhelmingly the group didn't like council training, and we overhauled the entire group with Samir as our speaker. We overhauled the entire training program for council last year. Made it more hands-on. You guys did a lot, like a mock meeting, mock legislative process. You went through motions. That's ideally what I'm trying to do, is get a few people on council to sit down with the speaker and the deputy speaker and really just assess what we did last year, provide feedback, provide their thoughts and ideas, and assist us in sort of developing council training further, just to see what ideas that you guys have as a group for the group that's coming in, and just looking at it from your own perspective, things that you wish you had known, thought you had known, but were wrong, maybe places where we failed to give you information, just that. It doesn't need to be a formal election. You can certainly just appoint yourselves, and when the meetings happen, I can email and you can come. But if you prefer a formal election for the sake of transparency, because last year we didn't necessarily announce it on council floor, for the sake of transparency so everybody knows who's on the particular committee, myself, the chair, the deputy speaker, and of course anybody on council who would like to participate, essentially. And that is all I'm going to say. Thank you.
Councillor Pratt, did you? Okay. On that note, oh yes, Councillor Tang.
Kyle Tang, Music President. Sorry, how many members are we electing? Like, what's the maximum number of members to be elected?
Seriously, you had to ask a follow-up question? Okay. Honestly, I don't have any preference. As many or as few can attend. Last year, I only had 3 members from council. I had the education, social science, and engineering counselors who were leaving, and they were the ones who assisted and helped with the training actually at the end of the year. So anyone, like I said, we don't have to have a formal election. Certainly if you would like a formal election, that's fine. I have place for five people on the ballot. Certainly up to you, but if members just want to appoint themselves and be part of the committee, that's certainly their prerogative. So it's not super formal. I like feedback. I like when you guys give me your ideas. To be perfectly honest, I don't attend the training. I'm not part of it, but I appreciate the feedback, because certainly last year was exceptional. It really, I was completely floored when I sat in that room and council members were like, we hate it. We absolutely hate it. And I was like, really? Because I thought this was great. And it was not great. So that's why I really encourage any one of you who are interested in training and development to just put forward your name, and I'm happy to include you on the committee.
Thank you. Oh, yes, Councillor Yee.
Proxy for Yi. He was just asking, what do you think the commitment would be for that?
Usually the committee members will attend between 2 and 3 meetings, depending on, usually the first meeting we'll sit down, we'll have a discussion. The second meeting I'll bring a mock of the training and development package, and by the third one they'll see probably what would be the finalized package, and just sort of review, make changes, usually editorial changes, and then the Speaker of Council and the Deputy Speaker will go ahead and create like presentations and worksheets and stuff like that based on that feedback. But that's usually at 2 or 3 meetings. I'm not a big fan of long meetings. Just give me all your complaints and then we'll do what we got to do. That's essentially it, 2 to 3 meetings. It's not going to be arduous, probably within a short span of time as well, because I want to have all of this done before the beginning of election period, because I get incredibly busy at that point. Good? Cool.
Okay. Would anyone like to put themselves forward for this committee? Councillor Yee.
I promise that this is consensual, but proxy for Frankie would like to nominate Frankie, and on behalf of Frankie, I'll accept the nomination.
Okay. Councillor Zonta. And Councillor Pierce. Councillor Dillon. Dillon. Okay. Consent. Would anyone else like to put themselves? Councillor Kimji. Okay. Any other nominations? No? Okay. So at this point, we could hold a formal election, or you can just ratify them. I guess we'll just do kind of a show of placards for ratification. Okay, looks like that. So I'll look for a motion to ratify these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 candidates. Councillor Eversley moves, and the seconder, Councillor Smart. All those in favor of ratifying these candidates for the committee? Okay, motion passes. Congratulations. I look forward to working with you. Okay, that concludes our for action section. We will now move into our for information section, beginning with the executive reports. You have 45 minutes.
I can bring this down now too. All the way up here. Nice. No. Let's just keep going. No worries. I just gotta figure out how to put this in. Is that it? Where'd it go?
Okay. So 45 minutes beginning now. Not yet.
Hello, everybody. I will fire through this. Sorry, 1 second, just pulling up my notes here. So, what have I been up to? October's kind of been a prep month for us, with September being super busy. Things kind of died down pretty nicely for us when you guys all left to go on Fall Reading Week. So that gave us a chance to really get going for advocacy season in November and start talking about budget season, which is also coming up. So we just got back from our mid-year retreat. We had it yesterday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and the entire retreat started talking about transition timelines for next year's regarding next year's executive. We started talking about budget. We started talking about minimum wage and how we were going to prepare for that internally, and just pretty much a wealth of things that we would never really get the chance to just sit down and talk about here. We went off-site and talked about them. Foko/Hoko, done. Everything went. Everything is gone, which is nice. Spoke accessibility. So throughout the Spoke renovations, well, after the Spoke renovations, we got a lot of feedback, and some of the feedback was regarding the accessibility with high tables. It was unfortunate that students in wheelchairs felt like they had to go to the back of the restaurant. So in order to take care of that, we started adding some more accessible tables around the front of the Spoke, as well as if there's even more of a need, we're going to start to look for other areas to continue to add them. But it was just kind of important to us to say, yes, we were compliant, but since it's one of our values to be inclusive, making a statement with that sort of thing and be one of the first on campus to really start taking those seriously. And we've already started having conversations with hospitality about how they can start adding accessible tables in each of their eating areas. So I'll make sure to update you on how that's going. PVP roundtable. We had a roundtable with all the VP academics and presidents, as well as Landon as myself, and we talked about a lot of our advocacy priorities for the year. It was interesting hearing about what everyone was doing in each of their faculties, and kind of just redrudged the importance of collaboration, because there's a lot of things that people are doing that are very, very similar. So if we can start to do some of these things together, there's easily economies of scale. Current. Oh, that's on there twice. Spoke accessibility. So that was more the accessibility piece of moving forward. We're going to continue to prioritize accessibility around campus. I don't know what's happening. There we go. Open office hours. They're happening Wednesday, 11:30 to 12:30. If any of you are looking for a way to try and start talking to students, I promise you it's a good way to start doing that. Naturally, one of your functions is student feedback. So if you ever want to come join us for open office hours, please do. Or if you think that, hey, there's this great spot where people are always busy, and I think this would be a good place for you guys to set up shop, please reach out to us and let us know. We're looking for anyone, and absolutely anyone that's willing to reach out. I was in talks with the counselors this week about some of the things that they wanted to bring forward, and some of them were saying, oh, that's a really cool way to get feedback on some of the things that I want to do over the course of the next month, which is very exciting. Budget submission consultation. So at the PVP roundtable, one of the things that we brought up was our budget submission for the university. What are things that students want to see, and those are continuing to move on. We've started looking into research and writing of them, but we're still looking for anyone who has any feedback about anything that they think would be a good idea when it comes to budget submission consultations. So please reach out if you have anything. There's also a budget submission town hall that the university is holding themselves on October 30th and 31st. So if you have something that you think is important that you want to bring directly to the university, the provost of the university is hosting a town hall, so feel free to reach out. A few of us will be there, so if you want to go with us, or if you just want to know when they're happening, feel free to let us know. Student Services Committee. So with the passing of the motion today, we can finally start to hire on that last member of the Student Services Committee, but as well as that, the work continues to move on. This year we're continuing to look at inflationary increases that are given to the university each year from the student fee. How can we keep them accountable from that end and make sure that they're using that money appropriately? To come, State of the USC next week, next Wednesday, State of the USC will be happening. We're going to have a lot of food, drinks, and entertainment all happening in the UCC atrium. As well, I will be giving a speech pretty much covering everything that we have done in the past 6 months and everything that we hope to do in the next 6 months. Come on. Homecoming was the last one. So we are jumping into homecoming conversations next year due to how political this year has kind of turned. There's been a lot of pressure from London, the city of London in general, as well as from Western administration to see, okay, how can we start to make this work? Because the thing that they've realized is saying homecoming isn't for students, isn't working at the moment. So there's going to be a lot of conversations moving forward about what that looks like moving forward. So if anyone has any feedback for that, feel free to reach out, and I'd love to sit down and chat with you. And that's everything from my end.
Hello, everyone. I hope you enjoyed your reading week, advocacy. So I'm going to start off with what I've completed. You may have noticed that we launched the online course syllabi database, which I was really excited about. That was a piece on our platform, and now students will be able to access an official database that'll be available to them in second semester. And so this was made possible through the registrar's office and with the help of the student senators, who are an incredible asset in this entire process. And then we got to work with Western to talk about how we were effectively communicating this database to students. And I was also heavily engaged in that process because it is sort of it could be complicated, but in some of the feedback stages, we addressed that and then communicated effectively, I thought. I also got to meet with the mayor and his chief of staff, with Toby. The bulk of those conversations were around FOCO and HOCO, with the bulk of the conversation being around supporting students and the city throughout the entirety of all the events. Additionally, we discussed in length some pedestrian safety concerns that we need to address in the upcoming environmental assessments the city is doing along Western and Sarnia Road, along with some other areas around campus. Additionally, it was a big focus this month on preparing for the USA General Assembly, and we started to finalize what our topics of discussion are for the November 26th to 30th week in Toronto at Queen's Park, our annual lobby conference. We have 6 priorities for this year. However, meeting with MPPs and ministers require that we be more clear and concise. So we've committed to 3 priorities for lobby conference. The 3 are open educational resources, the tuition framework and funding formula, and mental health. Our other 3 priorities, we've set out a different roadmap with a more legislative strategy to them. So we've identified some key political stakeholders that we'll be meeting with over the coming months to just discuss specific recommendations for those 3 priorities, which were sexual violence prevention and response, data reporting and accessibility, and experiential learning. And in progress, I've got many things going on, including a review of the airport shuttle service that we ran over the October reading week and preparing for December. So we're reviewing some of the survey data that students that participated in the shuttle had sent to us. And we're looking specifically at understanding where we could better promote the service and what elements of it could be more convenient to access and use for everyone. We're also reviewing what shuttles were more successful than others. And moving forward, we'll focus on running shuttles likely more in the morning than in the afternoon and evening, as those tended to be significantly more successful than the others. And we'll start promoting the service prior to entering the December exam period. The Hydro Support campaign, if you saw us in the atrium today, we were there all day talking to students about how to apply for the Ontario Electricity Support Board program. We've really emphasized in our social media and in-person communications the ease of applying for the program and the benefits of doing so. Off-campus housing also is delivering this information to 2,200 students door-to-door this week in the near-campus neighborhood, and to all Western students in the off-campus housing email. And again, just to reiterate, if you live off campus and someone in your household is paying for a hydro bill, you should everyone in this room should be taking the time to apply and at least see if they're eligible. You can do it online or ask me for an application during this meeting, and I can very simply walk you through the steps. We've received good feedback from students so far, commenting on the fact that we're providing them with an opportunity to save money on this monthly expense. Like when I was tabling today, I was just talking to students who just said, like, again, I don't really know what the USC does, but I think it's really cool that you're trying to do something that's so direct in my life for me. So I'm sort of looking at the long-term sustainability of this program, and if we can target it again to next year, or if there's a way we can target first-year students as they're entering the home buying stage in sort of the second, the later half of the second semester. This is gone. Anyways, on November 17th, we're having Open Education Day, which, again, we've partnered with the Danny from Science Students Council, Western Libraries, the Teaching Support Center, eCampus Ontario, and the University Students Council. We're working very diligently to get that all up and set and promoted on November 17th. So faculty members will be encouraged to RSVP at the event and commit to attending a session on open educational resources. We've got faculty, student, and administration buy-in on this event, which is super important, and I will likely be asking many of you to encourage some of your faculty members to participate in Open Educational Resource Day to just understand what they can do here on Western's campus. We are also preparing for the General Assembly, and we will be reviewing a lot of the USA survey data that we received. Hundreds of students responded to our USA survey, talking about the 4 papers, and our delegates and I will be preparing for this weekend over the next 24 hours before we go. And yeah, if you haven't filled out the USA survey, it would be great if you could, or at least share the survey for your constituents to participate in prior to tomorrow night. That would be great. And also the undergraduate teaching and awards recognition is in my portfolio. So every year the USC recognizes outstanding students on campus as well as undergrad professors. So far we've received 150 professor nominations, but the applications close on the 31st. So if you or your faculty's page could share the nominations post, that would be really helpful. And in the beginning of November, the Teaching Awards Committee will begin sort of the 3-week process of reviewing, and members of that committee actually go and sit in on professors' classes who have been nominated and evaluate them on that front as well. And then later on this year, I'll be asking for nominations from our council for 2 counselors to sit on the Student Awards Committee. So look out for that. And then what is currently coming is my birthday. So, yeah. Also, a rapid transit discussion. Next week I'm meeting with the Shift London Municipal team to discuss our hopes for the bus rapid transit project implementation. And I'll be working with my team over the next week to hammer down sort of what our hopes are for the project on a high level visioning and how to make it work for students. Additionally, I'll be discussing with the Shift team ideas for how to get Western students involved with the implementation of the BRT, because I don't think it should be just me. November 13th, Monday, November 13th is Pints and Politics in the Wave. The mayor, several city councilors, and the London MPs are all going to be in attendance. So tomorrow we're launching the event. Again, I'd appreciate if you could press RSVP yes, or share the event or something, and sort of drive students towards this informal event to engage with some city politicians. And I'd hope that all of you would be interested in attending. The event will have free food and free brews for the first 100 students to walk through the door. Also, we are having our undergraduates of Canadian Research Intensive Universities, formerly Advocan, Lobby Week in the beginning of November. So Toby and I are headed to Ottawa in the first week of November to talk about our federal priorities in coalition with our other federal colleagues across the country. We've finalized sort of the briefs for the week, and now we're working on actually preparing the schedule and ensuring we're equipped to meet with but MPs from every single party, including members of the cabinet, to discuss our recommendations. And then in the 3rd week of November, we have Local Advocacy Week, where students, particularly the students on the Advocacy Standing Committee, members of my team and the executive will be meeting with community leaders in the city and politicians to discuss the issues that are important to students. So at our last Advocacy Standing Committee, I'll let Alessia speak to it later, but we sort of talked about some topics that we'd like to bring to the Local Advocacy Week, and now we're again, my team is working on completing the briefs for those, and then we'll be doing a little bit of training with all the students involved in this so they feel comfortable meeting with community leaders and politicians and things like that. And we'll be aiming to meet with the mayor, city councilors, the police chief, for example, and just other community stakeholders. And then the campus, the Open Space and Landscape Planning Committee will be doing some public consultations in the beginning of November. So I know a lot of councilors have addressed individual or faculty-specific concerns for like different pedestrian safety things or just general feelings around the campus landscape. And I'm going to be promoting heavily opportunities for yourselves or your constituents to engage in those public consultations, whether it's an actual oral presentation like this to the committee or in some sort of written format. Those opportunities will be made available twice in the beginning of November, and I'll make sure that they're communicated effectively. And then again, with the environmental assessments that the city is picking up right now, the moment they put those back on the table in sort of the Windermere, the Richmond area and the Western Road and Sarnia Road, I'll be actively promoting that as well for students, Frosh, anyone to sort of drop by and bring up a specific concern in that area. Yes, and then I don't have anything else, so if you have any questions or just a comment here. I've been really working on my exec report, so if you have any feedback for how I can improve or what different you'd like to see in my report, please let me know at any opportunity. And thanks to a lot of the counselors who I've been getting to work with over this past month. I know I've worked closely with many counselors in the room, and I think it's a really good experience to sort of work collectively on some of these things. And to the Student Senate team, I think our relationship is in a really good place this year, and we're doing a lot more for students when we're sort of working together. So thank you. Are there any questions? Awesome. Thank you.
Sorry. Is that a me problem? No. All right, sorry about that, guys. So I'm just I'll keep this brief, but I'll run through the events that we've done over the past 4 to 5 weeks and then what's coming up in the next month. So October is a busy month. Even though there was the reading break, there's still lots going on either ends of it. So we completed Wellness Week at the start of the month in partnership with Student Experience and a few different departments throughout the university. So that included Neil Pasrica, a variety of different speakers, and a variety of de-stressor events that happen on campus. So really good support there from our health promotions team, Micah Hansen and Courtney Feeney, as well as our associate peer programs, Leslie Ruggieri. Enviro Week happened the week after Reading Week, and that was really extremely well run by Kevin Irving, our Enviro Western coordinator, and his team. Very impressed with how many different partners from off campus came together and how many different people on campus came to show what Western is doing to be a more sustainable campus and what we can do as London citizens to help that process. Right now, you may hear the screams, and you've been hearing them all night, but the USC Haunted House is in full swing, and today is its last night, but it's doing very well, and that's in support of Food Support Services. So a huge thank you to Justin Chung and his team for that piece. Want to wait till the end, or? Yeah. We only run it for 3 days every year, just because of the space restrictions at the Mustang Lounge and what else is needed to be in there. I know, disappointing. It's fun, but it takes a long time to build and a long time to take down, so it takes a full 2 weeks of the space. Tomorrow we have your culture is not our costume, and my costume is not consent happening in the atrium for the next 4 business days. So Thursday, Friday, Monday, Tuesday as a lead into Halloween, and teaching people about what types of costumes are appropriate and what are inappropriate. And then we also did our first club's town hall last week, and nice to engage with a few club members and a few club presidents and have those conversations. So currently, Landon and I are still working together on the CMHA peer support type grant, and hopefully things will launch in mid-November, so more to come on that. Peer Support Center discussion groups have started, but they're not all in full swing yet, so we have 4 discussion groups currently running, one of them in partnership with the WEC downstairs, but then most... lost it. I've lost it. Where is it? Why is it so complicated?
I don't know. It's gone.
I know. Oh? Okay.
That's not it.
I don't have any... Thank you. Okay. No, this is last month's. Yeah, it's gonna be this one. Yeah. This is this month's. Was it? Okay, my apologies. So discussion groups are happening and they will be rolling out, and I encourage you guys to take a look at the Peer Support Center page to see the different things that we're offering in partnership with our peer programs. Really, really supportive pieces there, and pieces that offer a different type of programming than someone just coming in to see a counselor or coming in to see a Peer Support Center volunteer. We are also doing orientation hiring still continuously, basically until the spring, so that will be a never-ending process, but we're currently hiring head softs, but the O staff team is mostly hired, including the 3 orientation coordinators, the orientation coordinator, the residence orientation coordinator, the academic orientation coordinator, and the associate orientation in the USC. The Political Advisory Committee is launching next week, so this will be a committee of people from our peer programs department who will look over Landon's advocacy initiatives or anything that I'm working with student experience on, and making sure that we're looking at it through a lens from different marginalized populations and making sure that we are taking different viewpoints into account. And hopefully their expertise and their knowledge will be a wonderful help in our advocacy initiatives this year. Yeah, and then committee hiring is happening as well over the next few weeks. We should be finalized with all of our committees by the end of October. So Fall Play. Fall Play is coming up, as well as a concert in November with Rhea May and Scott Hellman that launched last week. So that is in the Wave on November 14th. We are firming up details about a potential Tri-Side concert in January. I've been working with Mitch and Danny and Husnain and their VPSCs on those pieces. So really appreciate the collaborative effort and how much fun that's been to put together. The off-campus housing fair will be happening in mid-November, and that will be an opportunity for us to bring in not only large-scale sellers of or renters of homes and apartments, but everything in between, and the smallest landlord to the largest landlord in London, to make sure that students have a varied interest and they can see varied companies that are across London to make sure that they're making the right decision for them. We're also working on the Remembrance Day ceremony, which will be on Friday, November 10th in the Mustang Lounge at 11 a.m. and Dine in the Dark on November 19th, as well as International Week in the last week of November. Both large events that our portfolios are working on currently. Are there any questions? Cool.
So completed. We finished our first quarter in a really good position. It was presented to the board. The board vice chair is here, so she might speak to it a little bit more, but it was received well, so that's a reassurance there. And especially with the spoke renovation, we saw that the spoke was performing extremely well with the new renovation. We, in terms of the Project Ovidius team, we had our first data gathering session with the Pillar consultants that happened last week. And I think that that was a really great session where everyone engaged in looking at system issues that we have across our entire governance structure, and everyone was really engaged in that process. We're looking at booking our next session, which will be a larger group, so I encourage all of you to engage in that. I'll be posting the date as soon as it's confirmed, and so that will be the consultant sort of testing out different solutions and ideas and bringing them to representatives from council and board, and everyone being able to engage in that on a larger scale. I worked a lot with Mac over the past month to create budgets for all of his programming, and so my associate finance is now working with his associates to ensure that coordinators are really looking at their holistic budgets for the year so that we can ensure that we have programming, we don't run out of money, and that we're really using money effectively. Currently, the elections committee has been hired, so they're working on their training, and then we're also looking at what elections will be like for the year, so we're engaging with the student senators to bring back that relationship because we were on a different timeline last year, and we're looking at potentially being on the same timeline again this year, so I'm in talks with Western student senators and the university secretariat about that, as well as just sort of general planning, engaging with the governance standing committee, which I'm sure Keaton will talk about, on bylaw revisions, looking at elections policy, which hopefully all of you have been reached out to about to give your perspective on ways that we can make it a more approachable process for everyone. Like Toby talked about, we had our retreat where we talked about strategy for next year in terms of spending and budget, and so looking at ways that we can create a budget that will allow initiatives to come forward from different executives and that sort of thing. I continued as well, continuing to work with Western on the Money Talks initiative. My associate finance has really taken the lead on that. They've had a lot of sessions. I think that they're doing a sort of game of life in the atrium one day to really just engage students overall in financial literacy. And then that will also work to engage with Mac's portfolio and his health, financial health and income tax, and just reaching out to students to try to make that as accessible as possible. And then continuing to work with you and board to make sure that all of the committees are running effectively, that everyone feels engaged in the process, and I'm always here as a support if you ever want to meet before a meeting to run a motion by me, or to know who in the organization to engage with motions and creation of that, and any questions. I have a fairly large Google Drive filled with lots of institutional knowledge, which I've absorbed most of, but I'm happy to help you maneuver and dive into. And then I also, another ongoing is I just closed applications for a financial research intern. So I'm about to go through that hiring process. We'll be doing a process looking at our history of fee collection so that we can really, when there's a question such as when was the bus fee referendum brought in, hopefully we'll have a very comprehensive report to understand that. I did. It's lit up on here, but it's not lit up back there. I don't know what they are. Obviously, we'll never use Toby's computer for this again. So just a couple things to come. I have roundtables set with all of the VP finances of your faculty so that we can engage in collaborative efforts there. My position is kind of unique that it has that governance portion, so trying to look to engage whether you have governance officers or chief returning officers or those sort of roles within your teams as well, but VP finance is coming up soon. And then just continued to train grants and elections as we start to receive applications for grants and then go into the elections period starting at the beginning of next semester. Does anyone have any questions? Cool, thank you.
You get to start with me and end with me. So Jana couldn't be here today. She's not feeling too well, but she sends her regard. I know she's watching. Completed hype team hiring. So Jana's been working really hard over the course of the summer to create a new concept called the hype team. Basically, it's a new mode of promotion, guerrilla marketing in a way, that allows you to use people to market things as opposed to just putting up posters and that sort of thing. They were a huge help to Landon today with his Hydro campaign, and ran that for most of the day. So that was our first campaign, which is pretty successful. Week at a Glance has started rolling out. So if you're ever wondering what's happening on campus during the week, feel free to go and check our Facebook page, and we'll be posting Week at a Glance, and I think it will also be on our website. Current website surveys and focus groups. So we rolled out a new website, and we're still working out what exactly is the best way for it to run. So we're going to start running some focus groups to see how do students like it so far. If you're trying to get from this page to this page, how many clicks does it take you to get there? Do you know how to get there? And all those sorts of things. State of the USC is something that Jenna and I are working in conjunction on. So the event as well as a speech, it's going to be fun. And she also did a sweet job on a promo video that's going to be dropping soon. Wait. Study space on campus. There is going to be a video showing you cool study spaces on campus that you may have never heard of. So we might also show some spaces around campus and some places off of campus that some people like to study. So if you're ever looking for places to study, feel free to tune into that. To come, Jan is having communications roundtables, hopefully coming up this month. Please reach out to presidents if you could reach out to your VP Communications to make sure that we get some responses, because I don't think the last one got as many as we would have liked. And lastly, Mustang Express promotion. We're looking for how we can better promote such a great service. We've already started printing stuff to start putting on buses so people know that that random white bus is actually also the Mustang Express. But then also, how can we start promoting it to students to make sure that they know that it's going on? Does anyone have any questions? And I can try and answer. Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much. Now we will have a report from the chair of the Board of Directors.
Hi guys, my name's Rebecca. I'm obviously not the chair, I'm the vice chair. Andrew sends his regrets, but it was nice to be able to see your council. Everyone's very engaged, which is nice to see. There's not too much to report. We're meeting on Friday, and we're going to be going over the audited financial reports as well as the Q1 finances, so should be a pretty finance-heavy meeting. But other than that, nice to be here. If you want to come say hi to me, feel free.
Great. Now we will have the report from the chair of the student senators.
All right, so I'm not Courtney. She's actually the chair. I'm the vice chair. I'm Rav. So currently we are advocating for pass-fail courses at Western. Other universities do have pass-fail courses. The student senators have been meeting with Associate Dean Academics. We're going to be coming to a decision by October 31st, whether we'll be moving forward with this initiative. So as Landon mentioned, the course syllabus database is officially on Student Central, which is awesome. So we've dissolved our working group for that. Instead, we've now made a new working group, which will be looking towards missed work relief, similar to what they have at McMaster. McMaster allows you to basically move less than up to 25% of your grade for personal or medical reasons. So we're looking to see if we can implement something like that. The final exam schedule has been released as of October 6th, which ties us as the second earliest release in Ontario with Queen's, which is great. So moving forward, we're going to be working on creating or hoping to create official university policy and implementing that to reflect earlier releases or the same date as this year for next year and the following year and so on. We're currently in the process of hiring a new director of research, so thanks to the USC for sharing our link. We got a great number of applicants, and we'll be doing interviews this upcoming weekend and the next week. We're also in the process of drafting an MOU with SOGS. It's going to be similar to the one that we have with the USC. And I'd also like to address that there are 2 town hall meetings coming up. The executives did make note of that. Just a correction, they're on October. They're both on October 31st. One is from 2 to 3 p.m. and the other is 4 to 5 p.m. So that'll give you an opportunity to be updated on and to contribute to long-term planning, as well as high-level budget of the university. It's open to all members of the Western community. Yeah, and if you want more information on it, you can check our Facebook. And the room is McCullough Room 290 in the UCC. Is that this room? Theater. It's in the theater. Yeah. Yeah, that's it. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Now we will have the reports from the standing committee chairs, starting with the Governance and Finance Standing Committee.
Hi, I'm the Governance Finance Standing Committee Chair. There's not much to report. The one motion we did go through was Toby's amendments to the Standing Orders of Council. And then we just had some internal discussions about what sort of reports we should be receiving, et cetera, et cetera. The one big thing that we're still doing is the elections and nominations review. Hopefully you saw Massimo's post in the social group about it. And I would encourage you all to fill it out, as well as as well as share it with as many people as you can, in order to help us build the greatest database we can. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we will have the Advocacy Standing Committee.
Hello, everybody. So the Advocacy Committee, of course, talked about the paper proposals. Thank you for all of your input in that. And we mostly took our next step with Advocacy Week topics. We got a lot of ideas from the counselors on the committee, and what we're going to do is now have a poll and vote on which kind of top 3, just because of time constraints, that we will be talking to city councilors about during Advocacy Week, that is November 20th to the 24th. If any councilors are open to or very interested in going to meet with councilors, we are more than welcome to have you on our team. Some of the topics that we are going to be voting on to see which ones we're going to go with are homecoming and working with the city and emergency services, things like that, the cycling infrastructure, composting in London, sexual violence, specifically unfounded sexual assault, engaging students in municipal elections, near campus neighborhood development strategies, and that's it. So there's about 7 there. And the week before Advocacy Week, we're going to be having a training session for all the counselors who are going to go to the meetings. And in that training session, we're just going to be talking about how to use a brief, how to conduct yourself in those meetings, things like that. And if there's any more feedback, if you guys read over the proposals again for the advocacy papers and you want to add anything, I can definitely make myself available to give feedback to, and I can direct your concerns to the proper person. We also have counselors working with the associates in the writing process, so I can also make those names available if they're willing to connect with you. We can get the message across to the right people that way in terms of channeling the information. And that's about it. Thanks.
Next, we will have the Student Experience Standing Committee.
Hello, friends and proxy friends. So in our first meeting, I forgot to mention this, but we actually elected a vice chair. It's Jared Foreman. He's super sick. And in our actual meeting that happened in October, we ran the election of the Transgender Support Subcommittee that you guys voted on. And 3 councillors were elected. They were Julia Gordon, Jared Foreman, and Lucy Watson. So congrats to them. And at this meeting, we also discussed which USC programs we would like to review for the school year and create like a tentative timeline. So for this semester of during October and November, and we want to bring this to the November meeting, is Peer Support Center. So we've already kickstarted this review process, and we actually changed the review process a little bit to create more open discussion with counselors and students at large, as well as like the coordinators involved in the programs. The other ones that we want to review is accessibility, potentially in January, and charity ball after it happens this year, so around like February, March. And if we do have time, we also would like to look at early outreach. In addition, our committee also expressed great interest in reviewing purple bikes. So because we think a lot of work could be done with that. However, because it's not a USC service directly under the supervision of a USC exec, we would need to form like a subcommittee or something to review this. Mac is currently in conversation with Nick Sove from USC to kind of like work out what it could potentially look like. Thanks, that's it.
Next, we will have the Agenda and Council Operations Standing Committee. So the committee, we met last week and discussed and approved the agenda for this evening. And we will do so again in a couple weeks for the next meeting. And that's it. So we will now move into our for discussion section. Yeah. Councillor Yee.
Proxy for Frankie. Can I motion to recess for 15 minutes? 10 minutes? 7 minutes and 30 seconds?
Which one?
5 minutes.
5 minutes. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Kimji. All those in favor of a recess for 5 minutes? Motion passed. We'll see you at 9:28. Okay, please take your seats. Recess is over. Yo. Sit down. Okay, we will now continue with our for discussion section. Is there any business anyone would like to bring up to council for discussion? Councillor Olson.
I hope everyone saw the thing I posted in the Facebook group. Everyone knows what I'm talking about. No?
It's
Okay, so since we're all here, I figured we could discuss something I was thinking about. This tangentially pertains to the current elections review going on, in that it would sort of alter the composition procedure for council. So currently, the way that the council composition procedure works is that we start with assuming that council will have 46 members, and then we work from there. I was wondering if anyone had any ideas, like, do they see any significance in the number 46? Do they think it could be cut, raised? Do they think council is too large as is? I know we've had a lot of acclaimed positions this year. I myself was acclaimed. So yeah, just looking for any input.
Councillor Uhas.
Solid. Alrighty, so just a point of information, is the 2016-2017 copy of the composition the only copy that we have? I just need to know that before I can ask my question.
That's the copy that's on the website, but I know that right now it's changed. It is updated since then.
Yeah, just because I wanted to point out that engineering is now entitled to 3 members on council, no longer 2. So just kind of pointing that out for reference.
That would align with the numbers that I have.
Awesome.
Yeah, like, yeah.
Hello, Charlie Eklund, Huron representative. So just really quick, the ones in pink would be exactly how many each faculty is given, right?
Yes, if we were to do the council composition for next year, the ones in pink would be what we'd be looking at.
Okay, so looking at that, basically I'm looking at this from an affiliate perspective. The affiliate agreement stipulates that affiliates will have 20% of the positions on student council, like in the General Assembly. And crunching the numbers, we get 9 out of 46, which gets us close, but it's 19.5%, which I understand isn't a huge difference, but I think we should establish a precedent here and like make sure that it's a definite 20%.
Sorry, point of information, is that in the affiliate agreements?
20%?
Yeah.
Yes, it's in the affiliate agreement.
Because that's not in the council composition procedure, so that'd be important to include. But as far as the size of council goes, is it too large, too small? Do you feel like a body this large, governing what we're governing, experiences a lot of like fatigue?
Councillor Tang.
Kyle Tang, music president. I think that the number 46 is too many councillors. I think that we should reduce the number of councillors who sit at the table. In addition, the way that the system works now heavily favors larger faculties over the small faculties. With the number 46, which to my knowledge was a completely arbitrary number, I am the sole representative of my faculty, as FIMS and a number of other constituencies also only have 1. If we lower the numbers, it gives a little bit more significance to the small faculties, as they will retain 1 but have a higher percentage of the total voting power.
Councillor Kimchi.
Adam Kimji, social science counselor. So since we just went into like a furious debate about like how committees are either like being cramped for like members and they can't really fulfill other motions and such, right? I feel that if we downsize the council size, that perhaps the issue of committees being stretched for members might become more present in future years. So yeah, just putting that out there, I guess.
President Chelabo?
Just to throw in another perspective, I think it's important to look at the function of a body like this. I think that a large part of council's mandate is student feedback, and I think it's one that hasn't been fully tapped potential-wise with 46 members in a room. I think it strikes a balance of being able to have an effective conversation that doesn't have too many voices around the table, but also gives us enough people that if we really wanted to go out and do mass feedback, we have a vehicle to do so.
Councillor Yee?
Proxy for Yee, but I'm actually going to speak as Senator Sue. And having been past president of music, from my experience, having fulfilled that position by myself, I personally found that the workload was really hard to manage from a USC and a president perspective. And I know that's a view that only myself and FIMS could share because we're the only two faculties at the undergraduate level, at least, that have only one sole representative as president and USC counselor. So it was really hard, especially with the thought of having standing committees not having FIMS or music representation when presidents are given the option to opt out of those committees. From my personal experience, I felt as if I had to be on a committee because otherwise there wouldn't be music FIMS perspective at all in those standing committees, and that was something problematic from my perspective. And also knowing that there was interest for someone running for music counselor, though it's not a position that exists. So like knowing that there would be someone who would fill that position too, that's something that I feel really passionate about because I feel as if music would have loved to have that opportunity if possible, but seeing as the current composition doesn't allow for that, for whatever reason, but just like we wanted to do more and we couldn't just based off the composition, and the workload was a lot for me. Not speaking on behalf of Kyle, he's doing a great job, but for me I was like, no way, so.
Just a point of information, faculty presidents do not have to have their USC spot, so if you were to not sit on those committees and not sit on council, you would then be replaced by a music or arts counselor. So there is a potential for that role to be filled by a counselor if the president chooses to opt out, which can be done at the beginning of the elections period or done with a discussion similarly to Ivy is automatically the president, but then they sort of have their own system internally where they find representatives.
Councillor Kimji?
Adam Kimji, social science counselor. Just for the point of not downsizing, I feel that like as counselors we represent student voices, and if we learned anything in the past couple of years, that student voice is pretty diverse, and I feel that if we scale back how much counselors we have per faculty, that certain less popular viewpoints and stances might be underrepresented on council. More so like the popular people might get voted in, but mainly because their voices are the majority, and so like the smaller minorities and such, they might get less represented. That might be a fear, yeah.
Councillor Olson?
What about the idea of having a separation between presidents and counselors? Would most presidents be in favor of having their position replaced with counselors so there's that role separation where they're not so concerned with their home faculty and can instead focus solely on that, and the counselor representing them in their stead can focus solely on their role in the USC?
Point of information that already exists. It's written into our policy that because of similar to Danny Chang is not in his role as president, he has a counselor instead representing him. So I think that, I don't know if you're looking for a mandate where all presidents automatically give up their seat, but there already is a mechanism in place that allows for that.
That doesn't happen until the September election period though, right? If they did opt out?
Well, it depends how a faculty wanted to approach it. So if a faculty wanted to make an internal mandate where their president was never on USC council, then they could, though that president would not have had the position and then given it up, but their previous council could sort of mandate that. So also I'd like to add that there was a report prepared in 2014 by Jonathan English when he brought forward the current council composition. So I can submit that to the folder that's being used for discussion, but I would recommend that it's read first because I think it addressed a lot of the questions that are being brought forward, and there was sort of rhyme to the reason as they did research and interviewed a lot of people to come up with the current composition. I can share it with Keaton to post in the folder that he shared for this discussion.
Okay, Councillor Uhas.
Just kind of speaking more to your point about separating counselors from presidents, it can work in certain situations, but it definitely depends on the involvement the president wants to have in their situation. Like, for example, going to what Aaron said, I'm kind of like the representative from my association. Since my president does not have a seat on this council, I am the seat, like the position and the voice. But the only way that it works out in my situation, as well as with kinesiology and health studies, is we are under an even larger council that kind of like umbrellas us and unites us. And that's the thing that smaller faculties that are outside of the health sci bubble may not have access to, is kind of that like bridging and unity factor. So that's just kind of like a viewpoint from it. Yeah.
Councillor Pratt.
Mr. Pratt, social science president. Just as a council president, I figured it was pertinent for me to actually speak on kind of the divide between presidents and councilors. And as a president, accompanying 10 other counselors, I believe, from the largest faculty, or 11. I mainly see my role as kind of like a role of guidance. I'm more here to kind of observe what is best for my faculty and speak on what I think is best for my faculty, but I'm more here to facilitate my counselors as well. My main focus and why I don't sit on a committee is because so I can focus on my faculty initiatives and focus on my faculty council, which is my primary mandate. I'm speaking for myself here as well. I'm not speaking on behalf of all faculty presidents, of course, but just to add my 2 cents into this debate as well. And I do think that also as well, to add a more personal anecdote to reducing council size, Social Science Council used to have the largest faculty council, I think, between voting members, and we did cut back 7 or 8 positions last year. We cut our department rep positions in half, and council, I can't really say right now how council runs versus last year. It's too early to call, but I do think that it is an efficient process, I think. Limiting the size of a body, because I think if there's too many people associated with the organization, and as we've seen in the past few years with trends in elections being the majority of a lot of positions are acclaimed, I think that is a worrying trend for me as well, because I would like to see more student engagement in elections and more dedication from candidates in order to promote a platform and promote their own initiatives on council as well. So if seeing more competition for fewer positions would be nice as well.
Councillor Tang.
So speaking about the separation of faculty presidents from USC, I think that I would like to see a mandate where the USC representative from each faculty council is not the president, a separate counselor who is still elected. I think that this resolves a lot of the issues that have been brought to the table. For example, what Councillor Kimji said was that we would have potentially fewer people in committees. However, if you count the number of presidential opt-outs this year, it was quite high, and if you remove that by having all of them be replaced by counselors who are mandated to sit on subcommittee, or standing committees rather, the numbers do increase there. The same thing with what proxy for E had said, where there would be a lack of representation. If you're mandated to as a counselor, then there would be no lack of representation, because again, you have to sit on those standing committees. At the same time, echoing what President Pratt said, I feel as if having the president sit on this dual role does affect the workload. It's tough to have to run one council and then come here and participate as a full member. Allowing someone to fully commit their resources to this council, I feel, would just make things more productive on this end as well as the faculty end.
Counselor Caracciolo? Did you withdrawn? Okay. Counselor Cook?
Yeah, Jake Sawyer, engineering counselor. So first of all, point of information, I'd like to clarify that the numbers on the sheet are as of 2015, and so based on our current faculty numbers, we do get 3 counselors. If you just check that, it checks out. So the other thing is that speaking as someone from a faculty where our president did give up her spot this year, I think that the current procedure in place kind of just makes sense because the president has the opportunity to be on council, and then, for example, Elaine was really busy this year. She's doing a really hard program with Ivy as well, so she gave up her spot so she could focus on the faculty. So I think that, you know, the president's elected to represent their faculty. If they really want to represent their faculty most, then they have the decision themselves to go and take on more of that workload and give it up to someone else. And that's what Elaine did, and that's what any president in the room could do. So I don't really see why we need to change it. Like, the mechanism is in place and it's pretty simple. So I don't really understand the discussion, honestly.
Would anyone else like to contribute to the discussion? Mhm.
Okay, so the last thing is I've been getting some questions about the Excel spreadsheet. So since we have a hard cap, it uses basically just math to find the proportional representation of each faculty relative to the hard cap, and then it uses a bunch of rounding and other mechanisms. So like one faculty will get rounded up to another whole number if there's leftover numbers from before, like the integers, which isn't really that confusing if you do it, but just the fact that it caps at 46, I find to be sort of weird. I know there's some rationale for it. I just read it in Johnny English's report. He doesn't actually give any rationale. He just sort of outlines what it would be like. And I'm wondering if you guys see any merit to the other systems, which are also outlined in blue in the Excel spreadsheet, where each faculty and affiliate would start out with 1 representative, and then for every set amount of students, it would increment by another representative. So for example, per 1,000 students, per 2,000 students, per 825. Would you like to see the cap continue or go back to the per so much students rep incrementing with no cap?
Would anyone like to discuss?
I'd just like to point out that with the way the cap works, some faculties will lose out on some of their seats. So if you look at purple, that's the what should be the absolute current system. So engineering does have 3. Social science should only have 10. But then if you look at the first blue column, where it's per 825 students, it also has the same number of 46 counselors, but social sci has 1 less seat, and I believe health side does have a seat. So you can sort of see how the hard cap can sometimes favor these bigger constituencies. Does that make sense?
Any further discussion? Okay, thank you, Councillor Olson. Does anyone else have anything to bring for discussion? Yes, Councillor Yu has.
First off, I'd like to say a huge shout out for getting the USC website up and running. There's no more raw code, so that's actually really, really awesome. But there is one thing I did notice, and it kind of more pertains to the people who, again, fall under the health sciences umbrella. We are all basically given the exact same titles on this website. So that's kind of a bit of a, jab to some of us, considering our presidents, even though they are association presidents, are labeled as counselors, which they are not. And we're all labeled under health studies, which is its own school. So like nursing, health studies, completely different. And also council pictures.
I'm not sure if this is the most appropriate time to have that conversation, especially with Jana not here. But if you want to send your pieces over to Jana, and then we can make sure as a group that they're responded to this week. Perfect.
Councillor Peruzza? Okay. Any other discussion? Any new discussion? Yeah. Councillor Peruzza?
Massimo Peruzza, Arts President. So, with regard to what Keaton was saying about the elections review, if anyone would like to come speak to me after the meeting concerning their opinions on what the subcommittee should do, or if they have any feedback from their election specifically, I'd be happy to speak to them so we can collect some more information. Thank you.
President Shellabo?
Hello? Yeah. So I quickly touched on it in my report, but I forgot to kind of expand on it. During FOCO, we ended up handing out 3,000 hot dogs and a few thousand water bottles, which was a lot of fun. And I want to give a massive shout out to Lucy Watson. She showed up and stayed the entire day with us to hand out water bottles and hand out hot dogs. So huge shout out to her.
Okay. Is there any other new business? New discussion? All right, seeing none, we will move on to our new business section. So we have a few new business motions that were already submitted. Okay. Beginning with our international student representative. Whereas the involvement and engagement of international students in student governance and student experience related programs are low. Whereas President Chakma's vision is to internationalize the university. Thus, Council should respond and make an example by creating more opportunities for international students. Be it resolved that an international student representative position be created starting from September 2018 with at least the following terms and conditions. A resource member without voting rights, elected by Council during September meeting of Council as per the standing resolutions. The candidates and elected person must be considered an international student by the university. Be it further resolved that the international student representative will represent international and exchange students and promote Council opportunities and events to their constituency. So this motion has already been moved and seconded by Councillor Chow and Pratt. So, Councillor Chow, would you like to speak to this motion?
Just like a Councillor Chow, social science, just like kind of like FAQ. We just have a lot of like exchange students like every single year. It's just adding on that like exchange students like every single year. If you go to alumni hall, like a residence hall, like you can see a lot of like exchange students. Like they have no idea what is USC. Like I just like really want them to kind of like engage at the same time. Yeah, like otherwise like the reasons like they're like on the motion, so you can just kind of like read it out. Yeah.
Okay, Councillor Pratt, would you like to speak to this?
Yep, just to expand on, Mr. Pratt, Social Science President, just to expand on Calvin Cho's point, I think Western as an institution is moving much more towards becoming a much more international institution and really kind of support, advertising itself to international students from around the world to attract global talents. And I think as a student government, we need to represent kind of the growing dynamic of international students at this school. This is really just kind of a resource member position at this point in time. Also, just to add on to it for further debate and discussion on this motion, several councillors have approached Councillor Chow and I regarding sending this motion back to committee, so we would look favorably upon a motion. I'm not sure which committee it could be mandated to, but just for sake of expediting debate and discussion, if anyone wants to speak for it and push it to a certain committee as well, we would look favorably upon that. But yeah, just the rationale behind this. We need to kind of, I think this council needs to respond to the growing number of international students and provide representation and a voice for these students. Thank you.
Okay, that being said, would anyone like to motion to refer this to a standing committee? Yes, Councillor Tang.
I'd like to refer this to the Governance and Finance Standing Committee.
Okay, can I get a seconder for that? Councillor Prudza. All those in favor of referring this to the Governance and Finance Standing Committee? Okay, that motion passes. So the motion for international student representative has been referred to the Governance and Finance Committee. Our next motion is a motion to amend the terms of reference for the ad hoc LGBTQ2+ Student Issues Subcommittee. Whereas Council voted in favor of the adoption of the LGBTQ2+ Student Issues Committee at the September 27th Council meeting. Whereas the LGBTQ2+ Student Issues Subcommittee terms of reference is a substantial step in the right direction for Western students. Recognizing the original LGBTQ2+ Student Issues Subcommittee terms of reference makes no mention of affiliate students. Recognizing that improvements can be made to the current LGBTQ2+ Student Issues Subcommittee terms of reference to ensure greater consultation with Western students, be it resolved that Council pass the amended terms of reference for ad hoc LGBTQ2+ Student Issues Subcommittee terms of reference. So this motion has already been moved by Councillor Matthews, and I will look for a seconder. Councillor Eklund.
Cool. Okay. So essentially, we came together after the last council meeting, said this was a great motion. I think most people, if not all of us, agreed on that. But one of the things that we noticed of it is that it wasn't entirely inclusive or representative of the entire Western student body, particularly with affiliate students. And so if you were to look through the amended TOR, and I've worked with both Charlie, Mac, and Frank on this, and we're all in accordance with it, what it would say is that one of the members has to be an elected affiliate college counselor. So it would be increasing the number to 5 members on the Student Experience Standing Committee, with one of those members being an affiliate college counselor, proportional to the affiliate representation on the USC. And the second, we made 2 more changes to it. The second change is that we scratched out the thing that the clause that said that the subcommittee, if it requires more time to complete the task, may extend it. We want it to be in January, that they can come here, have a firm decision on it, and if changes need to be made, they need to kind of change their mandate to it. That way we can provide results immediately on this topic and not just kick the can down the road per se. And then the third one, which we think is very important, again, speaking to this whole idea of greater inclusion with the Western student body, is that the chair is required to hold open office hours, and the clubs that are affiliated with it, as well as any members of the Student Issues Subcommittee, have to promote the time of this meeting so that students who want to voice their concerns can come to it. Again, speaking to this whole idea that we can have a more inclusive environment and provide better results for January. Thank you.
Point of information.
Yes.
Sorry, Kyle Tang, Music President. How many members of the Student Experience Standing Committee are affiliate counselors?
Hi, I can answer that. There is one. It's Sam from Kings.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Eklund, would you like to speak to this motion? No? Okay. I will now take any questions regarding this motion. Councillor Foreman.
Jared Foreman, Social Science Counselor. Just a quick question. It doesn't show in the document that you attached that you amended the number of members from the Student Experience Standing Committee. It notes 5 members. We've elected 3 to the committee.
Yeah, that was a slight oversight on my part.
Okay.
If we could amend the TOR to have 5, that would be looked upon favorably.
Okay, and one other question. Do these members have to be from the Student Experience Standing Committee? Are you looking particularly from there, also considering that there is only one affiliate on the Student Experience Standing Committee, so that does complicate that. Can we potentially open that up to all of council?
So yeah, we can open the affiliate one up to all of council. The reason for the affiliate is to set a precedent for if we are to create these subcommittees in the future. we also added in the Pride Western coordinator as a non-voting resource member as part of that. So I guess we can move it to say like 4 members and then have a clause of B that says elected at large for affiliates if you want to do that.
Okay, so you want.
So it'd be 4 members.
Return it to 3 members from student experience and then 2 affiliates attached to that, or do you want 4 from student experience, including that 1 affiliate, and then 1 extra affiliate
we can
elected at large?
So we'll do 4 from student experience just in general to like keep it as that precedent, and then the precedent for affiliates we can have it so that clause B is at large for affiliates to make sure, just because again year after year you don't know if this will be the case, and we're setting a precedent. So yeah.
Perfect.
Was there a motion in there?
Yeah. Yes.
Motion to amend to include exactly that.
Okay, so do you just want to repeat?
Sure. All right, so under the composition section of the terms of reference, 1A would change to 4 members of the Student Experience Standing Committee, with one of these members being an elected affiliate college counselor to the USC, and then there'd be a new subsection under section 1 of composition, which would include 1 affiliate counselor elected at large from council.
Okay, so the 1A will be amended to 4 members, and then there will be a 1E, which reads 1 affiliate counselor elected at large. Yeah. Can I get a seconder for that amendment? Councillor Matthews? Are there any questions regarding that amendment? Okay, Councillor Matthews?
Can I just make a question on like just what's written there? Like it does say like affiliate voting member on that, correct? Is that is the plan with it?
For the
for section E of like part 1 section E.
Saying that they're a voting member?
Yes.
Okay, any other questions regarding this amendment? Okay, we will move into debate. Would anyone like to speak to this amendment? Yes, Councillor Yee.
Proxy for Yee. Speaking in favor of this motion, I also, sorry, I have a quick question. So not really a question, but just like something that I noticed. Just under clause 2.d, you have hold at least 1 office hour. I understand the thought process behind.
Yes, we're just discussing the amendment.
My bad. Withdraw for now.
Any other debate? Yes, Councillor Foreman.
Jared Foreman, Social Science Counselor, motion to call to question on the amendment.
Seconder, Councillor Watson. All those in favor of calling to question the amendment? Okay, that passes. We will call to question the amendment. Okay, all those in favor of the amendment to the motion? Okay, that passes. The amendment is approved. Now we will return to discussing the motion as amended. Councillor Olson.
It's Keaton Olson, Social Science Counselor. These terms of reference were sent to the Student Experience Committee with the expectation that it would be in their jurisdiction to continue on with not only ratifying the terms of reference, but also striking the committee. So I don't understand why we're debating it on the USC floor right now. I'd motion to table this indefinitely, pretend it never happened, and they can pursue this further in the Student Experience Standing Committee.
So would you just like to refer it to?
Motion to table.
To table, okay. Can I get a seconder for the motion to table indefinitely? Councillor Uhas, all those in favor of the motion to table this motion indefinitely? That motion fails. It was 19. So, yeah, you need 2/3 majority. Okay, then we will return to discussing this motion as amended. Would anyone like to discuss, debate? Councillor Yee?
Can I do this now? Okay. Returning to what I was saying, apologies for earlier. Yeah, I'm just looking at section 2, line D, where it says that to hold an office hour, and again, I understand where that's coming from. However, just knowing other standing committees right now, none of the committee chairs are required to have current office hours, and the idea behind having people, representatives, is that they are representing the constituents. So I personally do not see a necessity to have that clause in there. But that's just, yeah, that's from my perspective.
Councillor Zhu?
Hi, I actually have a question. I was just wondering what the reasoning behind having an affiliate representative be in there for. Like, are there any unique LGBTQ sort of student issues pertaining to affiliate students? Is that like, yeah, that's it.
Charlie Eklund, Huron representative. The reason for that is, like, as I reiterated in for discussion, in the affiliate agreement it states that affiliate students have 20% representation on council, and we felt it to be necessary that affiliates would have at least 20% representation on this council. And since, 5 divides easily, like 1/5, that was the reason we felt one representative from the affiliates.
Councillor Tang? Did you have your, no? Okay, sorry. Councillor Watson?
Lucy Watson, Health Sci Counselor. I also just wanted to speak to what Proxy for Yee was discussing about office hours. I believe that as the subcommittee is not a representative of like the LGBTQ face of Western, we're just there to sort of facilitate those sorts of conversations and talk about like USC inclusivity with those representatives. I feel like there are tons of resources and places that people can go to access those resources, like Pride and Ally, so on and so forth. And therefore, I feel like the office hours are not necessarily like, they don't need to be in there. So I guess I would like to make an amendment to get rid of that stipulation of 2D.
Can I get a seconder for that? Councillor Ali? Currently? We are voting on the amended terms of reference for the ad hoc LGBTQ2+ Student Issues Subcommittee. Oh, sorry. Like the amendment that was just proposed. So under section 4, 2D. To remove the clause that says hold at least one office hour to be made public following each meeting. I believe it could be done in committee. Okay. So first we have the amendment proposed by Councillor Watson, seconded by Councillor Ali. So we need to vote on that first, and then that. All those in favor of the proposed amendment? Oh, sorry. It's to, under Section 4, the meetings, chair, and reporting. Under that, there's a Section 2, and number D is hold at least one office hour to be made public following each meeting. So all those in favor of that amendment? Just a moment. The amendment fails by 1 vote. Now we will discuss the motion to refer to committee. And you're referring to the Student Experience Subcommittee. Councillor Pratt? Yes? Referring to Student Experience Subcommittee? Or sorry, committee. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Kimji? All those in favor of the motion to refer to Student Experience Committee? All right, that passes. The motion is referred to the Student Experience Committee. Moving on to our next new business motion. Whereas the Orientation Advisory Committee requires a student representative, whereas this falls within the purview of the Student Experience Standing Committee, be it resolved that Council pass the following amendment to the Standing Committee Terms of Reference. And I believe there's only one amendment in it, is that correct? Yeah. That reads under the Student Experience Standing Committee mandate that they will review applications and select the student at large for the Orientation Advisory Committee. So this motion has not yet been moved. I'll look for a mover. Councillor Olson, and a seconder, Councillor Sawyer. Are there any questions? Sorry, Councillor Olson, would you like to speak to this motion?
Yeah, yes. Social Science Councillor Keaton Olson. This is a great motion. Very cut and dry. It's worded, it's perfect. In every facet. I would encourage anyone to raise their placard once Mac is given his spiel and move to call to question.
So you moved to call to question. Can I have a seconder? If anyone likes to second.
Wait, so it's not
Oh, sorry. Mac, would you like to motivate it any further? Do your spiel.
No, I think Keaton said it all. It's just a way for us to have for this standing committee to have more of a say in student representation on another committee that is very, very involved in enhancing the student experience. So very cut and dry, very simple, but yeah, we can call a question if that's what you guys would like to do.
Okay, so look for a seconder. Councillor Ali. All those in favor of calling to question? All right, we will call to question. All those in favor of the motion? yeah, we have clickers. Polls are now open. Oh, there we go. All right, polls are now closed, and the motion passes unanimously. Are there any other new business motions to be brought to council? Do you have a new business motion? Okay.
So point of information to the Secretary Treasurer. In your opinion, would it be in the best interest of this council that all things that could be sent to committee before coming to the council floor go through committee in the first place?
I think that would be a great precedent to set. I think we saw with Toby's motion when it came through and Keaton was able to give a presentation on the conversation that occurred at the committee level and to provide a recommendation from the committee. It would still allow for the decision point to occur at the council floor and for conversation to occur, but by breaking it up into smaller groups, and we all do have to go to those committee meetings, so why double up on efforts when our meetings can end at 10 p.m. like it might today? So I would definitely say that is a great suggestion. Thank you, Keaton.
Is there any other new business? All right, seeing none, I will look for a motion to adjourn. Councillor Peruzza and a seconder, Councillor Middle. All those in favor of adjournment? The meeting is adjourned.